There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. We now come to notices of motion. Does any member wish to give a notice of a motion? Honourable member at the back.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I hereby give notice on behalf of the ANC that at the next sitting, the House discusses addressing the rising number of unemployed teaching graduates, especially black ones. I so move.
Are there any further notice of motion? Honourable Meshu.
Chairperson, on behalf of the African Christian Democratic Party, I give notice that I shall move that the House debates the implications of the decision that was taken by the South African Football Association to make a payment of $10 million to the Confederation of North Central America and the Caribbean Association Football, given the present criminal investigations by the Federal Bureau of Investigations into the affairs of FIFA. Thank you.
Are there any further notice of motion? The Honourable Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. I rise on behalf of EFF to move in the next sitting the House debates the need to separate our sports from politics and to prevent senior sports administrators from holding political office, as in the case of Danny Jordan, who is the president of SAFA and a mayor of a municipality. I so move.
The DA.
Honourable House Chair, I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting this House debates, as a matter of urgency, the scholar transport policy adopted by Cabinet last week. Thank you.
The ANC.
On behalf of the ANC, I hereby give notice that at the next sitting the House discusses investing more in research and innovation in order to create more jobs and more entrepreneurs.
Are there any further notice of motion? The EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. I rise on behalf of the EFF to move that in its next sitting, the House debates the ways Lonmin could have prevented the Maracana massacre, as shown by the Alternative Information Development Center report entitled Lonmin, the Maracana Massacre and the Bermuda Connection, which shows that had Lonmin not engaged on illicit financial transfers, it would have been able to pay minors the 12,500 they demanded. So move.
The ANC.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby give notice on behalf of ANC that at the next sitting, the House discusses the mobilization of state and civil society to deal with issues of crime in an integrated approach with active citizen involvement and co-responsibility. I so move.
The IFP.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Of the Inkatha Freedom Party, I shall move the listing of the House that the House debates the socio-economic and political implications of the recent unemployment figures released by Statistics South Africa on youth development. I so move.
The DA.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates the undemocratic and unconstitutional practices of the ANC in undermining the mandate of the Public Protector. I so move.
The EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. I rise on behalf of the EFF to move that in its next sitting, the House debates the complicity of Botswana with a neo-colonial project of the United States through its support of the African Command Center, a military project of the US based in Botswana, and what needs to be done towards isolating Botswana from the rest of Africa. I so move.
Are there any further notice of motion? Member at the back.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I hereby give notice on behalf of the ANC that at the next sitting, the House discusses building an inclusive society and economy to address the factors that still sustain inequalities through building capabilities and redressing the wrongs of the past. I so move. Thank you.
The DA.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates the Road Accident Fund and how legislation in this regard can be amended to better serve road crash victims. Thank you.
The ANC.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby give notice on behalf of the ANC that at its next sitting, the House discuss the extent to which local beneficiaries could be affected in our mineral resources without undermining the unity of our people and their overall participation in all economic activities without being prejudiced by their geographical location. I thank you.
The DA. Honorable Balindlela.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates the urgent need to address the issue of raw sewage leaking into the tributaries that lead into the Midma Dam in KwaZulu-Natal. Thank you, Chair.
The ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby give notice on behalf of the ANC that at the next sitting of the House discusses strategies to capacitate communities and community organizations to assist in sustaining the rehabilitation of former prisoners, as well as their reintegration into community. I so move.
The DA.
Thank you. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates the possible identities of South African co-conspirators 15 and 16 and their involvement in the 2010 Soccer World Cup corruption scandal.
The ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson. I hereby give notice on behalf of the ANC that at the next sitting of the House, discuss protecting and nurturing small businesses as they have a potential to uplift the country's economy. I so move.
The DA.
Thank you, Chair. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting, this House debates the Department of Social Development funding of NGOs and the effect this has on the availability of professional services in this sector. I so move.
The IFP.
Thank you. On behalf of the Inkatha Freedom Party, I shall move at the next sitting that the House debates the shockingly massive backlog of patients awaiting surgery at public hospitals around the country and how the Department of Health intends to undo this and prevent it from ever happening again. I thank you.
Are there any further notice of motion? The DA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at the next sitting this House debates the new job-killing visa regulations that were implemented without any regulatory or economic impact assessments being undertaken and urgently find solutions to strike a balance between our country's safety and tourism facilitation. Thank you.
The DA.
Thank you, Speaker. I hereby move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that at its next sitting this House debates women's participation in the South African labour market, which stands at just 45%, and how this must be improved with the creation of more equal pay opportunities for women. I so move.
Are there any further notice of motion? Are there any further notice of motion? None. We then proceed to motions without notice. Are there any motions without notice?
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I rise on behalf of the EFF to move without notice.
Honourable Ndlozi,
that the House.
Can you just hold? Honourable members, there's too much noise. It's notice without, it's a motion without notice, so it's important for everyone to listen to it. Proceed, Honourable Member.
Thank you. I move on behalf of the EFF without notice that the House notes that the South African Football Association President Danny Jordan has confirmed that the 2010 Soccer World Cup local organizing committee paid an amount of 10 million US dollars to the CONCACAF for what is called their diaspora legacy program. Further notes that law enforcement authorities in the US have interpreted this as a payment of bribes for South Africa to host the 2010 Soccer World Cup and have arrested some members of FIFA on charges of corruption, racketeering, and racketeering. Acknowledges that former CONCACAF General Secretary and member of FIFA has admitted that a CONCACAF and as FIFA members, they received bribes which, amongst others, were meant to influence the decision on who hosts the 2010 FIFA World Cup. Further acknowledges that the South African government has distanced itself from payments of bribes to any member of the FIFA executive or any continental football body for purposes of hosting the Soccer World Cup. Believes that the South African government and parliament should never take the allegations of corruption and bribery lightly, irrespective of where they come from. Further believes that unless thoroughly investigated and exposed, the perceptions of the world will be that all of us in South Africa are corrupt and paid bribes in order to host the 2010 Soccer World Cup. Calls on South African law enforcement authorities to investigate with the aim of answering the following question: whether the local organizing committee approved the donation of the money to CONCACAF. Who exactly approved the donation and for what purpose? Whether the donated money was used for football development in the Caribbean, whether there was other payments made to the LOC or its members, to members of the FIFA executive as alleged by Chuck Blazer. What happened to the profits of the 2010 Soccer World Cup in South Africa? Whether South Africa gained real economic value from hosting the 2010 Soccer World Cup? And why the LOC specifically singled out Jack Weiner as a person with the fiduciary duties over the 10 million US dollars, and further arranged the former and late President Nelson Mandela pay a personal visit to him in Trinidad and Tobago prior to the awarding of 2010 Soccer World Cup hosting rights. Believes that that a South African probe into the scandal will prevent a possible situation where South African officials will be arrested and persecuted in other countries for crimes our criminal justice system can internally handle. That a speedy and prompt action of these developments is necessary and should be embraced by all members of Parliament. I so move.
Honourable members, I now put the motion. Are there any objections? There is an objection. Are there any further motions without notice? The ANC. Order, honourable members.
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that the House note with great pride the conferring of the Legacy Award to Ms. Letambuli by the International Women's Forum on Friday, the 22nd of May at the Sandton Convention Centre. Further notes that this was an award for her contribution to music and the role in the struggle for a just and democratic society. Recalls that this world-acclaimed artist used her passion for music to provide hope and capture storytelling and still captivates many of her supporters. Further recalls that her contribution has also been widely and internationally acknowledged. Believes that South Africa has been enriched by the tapestry of the music and the culture that embodies her songs and her dance. Congratulates Ms. Letambuli for the award and wishes her much success in her future endeavors. I thank you.
Honourable members, I now put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to.
Chairperson.
Yes, honourable member.
Yeah, I noticed that the member who just spoke now, she was not objecting to the motion of the EFF to investigate the allegations of corruption. She was raising her hand to be recognized by you, because it did not go to, and she doesn't have the mandate of the whipper of the ANC as well. So,
Honourable Shavambo, she just indicated again that she has objected to that motion.
But corruption must be investigated. I mean,
Honourable member, there's an objection.
Honourable House Chair, you know, most of the time we waste time here for something that is absolutely no need for us to discuss. The comrades from EFF know that the police are currently have announced that they are investigating this matter. So there's absolutely no reason why we should ask them to do what they already are doing.
Thank you, Honourable Chief Whip. Order. The DA.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance,
I hereby move without notice that this House notes that the new SRC at the University of Fort Hare has pledged an astonishing 300,000 rands to provide meal allowances to students at the university currently going hungry. Further notes that the money will be used to support NSFAS students as an interim measure until the university comes to the table with improved meal allowances. Acknowledges that up until now, students were given dismal 13 rand per day as a meal allowance. Further acknowledges that 13 rand a day is an unacceptable amount and has led to hunger and malnutrition of thousands of students at the institution. Congratulates the students of Fort Hare for their remarkable activism, show of solidarity and dedication to the cause of not having a single student going hungry. Applauds the new SRC at the University of Fort Hare for putting basic human rights first and for introducing this initiative to the institution for the first time in its history. Thank you very much.
Honourable members, I now put the motion. Are there any objections? Honourable Chief Whip?
Honourable Mbanga knows that...
Are you objecting, Honourable Chief Whip?
You're objecting.
Thank you.
He knows it's not true.
Thank you.
Point of order.
No, wait, Chief Whip. Honourable members, when we come to a motion without notice, it's sufficient simply to say you object. If we allow debate after each and every motion, then we will sit here for a very long time this afternoon. So an objection is in order. The substance can be dealt with outside of the meeting. Okay? The EFF?
Honourable Chair, we thought that if we propose an amendment, the ANC might be persuaded. Just one line.
No, Honourable Member.
Motion that was read.
The procedure according to which we work is that must be agreed upon before the sitting.
The DA can simply say, having taken after
Honourable Member,
of the EFF
don't amend the DA's motion for them. Your relationship with the DA can be discussed outside of the meeting. The Chief Whip is here. Honourable, not you, Honourable Maxon, the member just behind you. Yes.
Honourable Chair, I rise on behalf of the Economic Freedom Fighters to move without notice that the House knows that as part of our responsibility as an economic emancipation movement, the EFF embarked on a listening campaign in Mpumalanga, where we uncovered unspeakable levels of corruption and complete disregard for the well-being of our people perpetrated by the African National Congress. We further note that residents of Chochocho village have no running water and only received water from municipality tanks when there is a funeral or a wedding in the area. And even that water is sold for 2 rand a bucket. Shame. Further acknowledge that where the government decide to install water taps in the village, it will save the government a lot of money, as it would eliminate the need for maintaining and buying water tanks. Notes that the residents of this village claim that for any kind of a job opportunity that arises, people are asked to produce ANC membership cards before they can be considered for employment. We urge the ANC to stop playing politics with the well-being of the poor and provide water to the people of Chochocho. I so move.
Honourable members, I now put the motion. Are there any objections? Yes, there's an objection. The ANC?
I object, Honourable House Chair.
I thought you're rising for another motion because I recorded the objection. Yes, Honourable Member?
Honourable Chair, I move on behalf of the ANC that this House notes that the General Assembly of the United Nations in its Resolution 66/127 designated 15 June as World Elder Abuse Awareness Day. Further notes that the global population of people aged 60 years and older will be more than double from 542 million in 1995 to about 1.2 billion in 2025. Recognizes that between 4% to 6% of elderly people have experienced some form of maltreatment in their homes. Further recognizes that the abuse of elderly people is a global social problem that affects the health and human rights of millions of seniors. Believes that all humans have the right to age dignity and free from neglect, abuse, and violence. Further believes that this abuse deserves the attention of international community and calls upon all governments, civic society, churches, communities to protest its elderly citizens and report the abuses of elderly people to social workers and the police. I thank you.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections?
Object.
There's an objection. Are there any further motion without notice? The IFP.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I hereby move without notice that the House, one, congratulates A.B. de Villiers on winning 5 awards last night at Cricket South Africa Awards. Notes that Mr. de Villiers has won the prestigious South African Cricketer of the Year award for the second successive year. Acknowledges that such accolades are important to be awarded to our sporting heroes and keeps them motivated, and thus they always aim to succeed even more. And finally, wishes all the winners, including the likes of umpires, ground staff, and scorers, without whose contribution the game cannot be played, another great year on the field, and keep on shining. I thank you.
The DA.
Thanks, Chair. On behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I hereby move without notice that this House knows that earlier today the Hawks officially announced that they will conduct an investigation into South Africa's possible involvement in the bribery allegations about the 2010 Soccer World Cup. 2, acknowledges that the Minister of Sport, the Honorable Mbalula, has repeatedly denied that a $10 million transaction ever occurred. 3, further acknowledges that the head of the 2010 local organizing committee and nowadays part-time mayor of Nelson Mandela Bay, Mr. Jordan, seems to contradict the minister by admitting that a $10 million transaction did in fact occur. 4, calls on the Hawks to investigate this matter free from any political interference and in a transparent manner that will provide South Africa with the answers that we need. And lastly, also calls on to the Hawks to expedite this investigation in order to put the matter to rest and restore our nation's international standing as soon as possible. I so move.
Honourable members, I now put the motion. Are there any objections? Yes, objections. Are there any further motions without notice?
Point of order, Honorable Chair. On the point,
Yes, Honourable Member.
I know the motion I read won't be objected to, but as a matter of procedure, could you please put it to the House? You jumped that little bit.
My apologies, Honourable Member. The motion without notice that dealt with congratulating A.B. de Villiers for achieving for the second year in a row South African Cricketer of the Year. Are there any objections to that? No objections. It was recorded. The Honourable Maxon.
Thank you, House Chair. I rise on behalf of the FF to move without notice that the House notes that the current Minister of State Security, David Mahlobo, and the former Minister of Intelligence, Siyabonga Cwele, who are responsible for managing spies, are the ones that went to Mpumalanga to welcome back their ANC spies they had sent to destabilize the FF, Disparato. Note that their covert political agenda against the FF failed dismally. We wonder why they had to make fools of themselves in this particular manner. Further note that while these two chief handlers of ANC spies claim to have been welcoming over 1,000 members of the FF back into the ANC, they were only welcoming back a handful spies of about 10 or so. The rest were rented crowd from the Zank. Note that their failure at intelligence operations is not something new. Siyabonga Cwele has a wife who is in jail for drug stealing. This happened under his nose when he was a Minister of Intelligence. Oh, what a shame. David Mahlobo is on record as admitting that conducting intelligence gathering from questionable blocks, which purports that the public protector and the commander-in-chief of the economic freedom fighters, President Julius Selo Malema, are agents of the CIA. Further note that incompetence of this Minister of State Security and this preoccupation with economic freedom fighters is a serious threat to national security. Note that the FF is growing in leaps and bounds in Mpumalanga and is on course to take over municipality in Mbombela, Nkomazi, Ehlanzeni, and others in the next local government elections. Down with spies, down. I so move.
Honourable members, I now put the motion. Are there any objections? There's objections. The ANC, order, honorable members. May I also just remind honorable members that these different motions must be made available to the NA table staff. I've just received a list of them. Before 12 o'clock, that is the agreement amongst the different whips of parties. Can we stick to that agreement, please?
Thank you, House Chair. I move on behalf of the ANC that this House notes that 2 South African soldiers, riflemen Ashwin Zes and Zongezile Victor Nkosha, were among the 125 soldiers, police and civilians that were posthumously awarded at the Drag Hammarskjöld Medal at the United Nations headquarters in New York. As part of the commemoration, the International Day of the UN Peacekeepers further notes that the riflemen Ashwin Zes and Zongezile Victor Nkosha died last year while serving in the United Nations Organization Stabilization Mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Recalls that about 3,358 soldiers, police and civilians died while carrying out the United Nations peacekeeping duty as a result of acts of violence, accidents and diseases. Acknowledges the dangers and risks our soldiers have to go through as they discharge their duties and bring about peace and stability in countries that are engulfed with conflicts. We further salute their honor and bravery in which they carried out their mission, as well as putting South Africa on the world map. Thank you.
Honourable members, I put the motion. Are there any objections?
There's an objection.
There's an objection. The UDM.
Chair.
House Chair.
The chief whip of the UDM.
Yes, House Chair. Ndicela uthetha ngesiXhosa kuqala ndisithi Makabane siyamosha. There was a motion without notice by Biteta about awareness kwinto edibenise nabantu abadala and the abuse against you. I mean, abantu abasibukele ekhaya babuza ntoni xa siza objector to a motion ethetha about the challenge ekhoyo. That is wrong. I understand ukuthi there are challenges where there are objections and
Honourable member,
objections.
that is not a motion you are...
It's a motion, yes.
No, but you are now introducing...
Yes.
And prefacing what you are saying. You are out of order. Will you get into the motion, please?
Yes. I move on behalf, but what I said is indeed
No,
true.
honourable member, you are here to read the
I move on behalf of
motion.
the United Democratic Movement that the House notes with sadness that on the 23rd of May 2015, it was reported that a mathematician and Nobel Prize winner, Mr. John Nash, was killed in a car crash along with his wife in New Jersey. Recalls that Mr. Nash received his PhD in mathematics from Princeton University in 1950 and spent much of his time there. Further notes that Mr. Nash was awarded a Nobel Prize for Economics in 1994 for his work on game theory and mathematics for decision-making. Acknowledges that according to his biography, he became experiencing what he described as a mental illnesses in 1959 after marrying Alicia. And the film, A Beautiful Mind, was loosely based on his battle with schizophrenia. Further acknowledges that the story of Mr. Nash and his wife moved millions of readers and moviegoers who were inspired at his courage in the face of daunting challenges. Conveys its sincere condolences to Mr. Nash's family, friends, and former colleagues, as his passing is a great loss to the academic community. I so move. Thank you.
Honourable members, I now put the motion. Are there any objections?
No,
Yes.
Chair, a quick clarity through you.
Can I just complete this process, please?
No, Chair, there's a huge confusion.
No.
Because we don't know
No.
if the closer part is part of the motion he read.
No, honourable member. That's why I asked the honourable members to start reading the motion. And the motion that we have received here at the table deals with exactly the issue of the mathematician that has died in a car crash. I cautioned the honourable member before he read that he should not preface his motion by making other remarks. This is not a free-for-all debate. You get up and you raise your motion and the House decide whether they agree with it or not. So the preface is not part of the motion. Right. I now put the question on that motion.
Yeah, just before, Chair, I think the honorable member must be seriously warned.
Honorable member,
That he
I
must
think
not
I've
do
dealt
that
with the
again.
matter.
Was serious. We're dealing with serious business of the house. We don't
Honourable
want to
member-
be confused.
Honourable member-
Particularly using COSA.
Your
and you want
concern
to
is
confuse us
noted.
with, it's not right.
Your concern is noted and it has been addressed. No, honorable members, no. No. Honorable members, let us observe and obey the rules of the House. And we are at the order where we deal with motions without notice. I've dealt with the matter of the Honorable Chief Whip of the UDM. The Honorable Chief Whip of the UDM, will you take your seat, please? I want to put your motion to the House. Thank you. I now put the motion. Are there any objections? Are there any objections? There's no objection, so the motion is agreed to. The IFP.
Thank you, House Chair. The IFP moves without notice that the House congratulates SAA Cargo for issuing an embargo on the transportation of hunting trophies, which became effective as from the 21st of April 2015. We acknowledge also that this is the first major airline to put in place sending the South African trophy hunting industry into tailspin. We further acknowledge that global aviation giants, Emirates Airlines, has also put in place this embargo, which will come into effect from the 15th of May 2015. We appreciate that this is a brave move by SAA Cargo, which is a major stakeholder in the tourism industry in Africa, and has taken a proactive decision to help protect and conserve our rich and diverse natural heritage. We hope that now other international airlines will follow suit and refuse to play part in the wildlife trafficking supply chain. I thank you.
Honourable members, I put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. Are there any further motion without notice? The UDM.
Thank you, Chair. I move on behalf of the United Democratic Movement that the House notes that a small solemn memorial service was held close to a recently discovered shipwreck where over 200 Africans taken as slaves drowned to the bottom of the sea. Further notes that the Portuguese ship was sailing from Mozambique to Brazil when it sank in turbulent waters near Cape Town in December 1794. Acknowledges that researchers say it is the first time that the remains of a slave ship that went down with slaves aboard has been identified. Further acknowledges that the director of the National Museum of African American History will be attending the public symposium called Bringing the Sao Jose into Memory in Cape Town today, and has stated that locating, documenting, and preserving this cultural heritage through the Sao Jose has the potential to reshape our understandings of a part of history that has been considered unknowable. And lastly, congratulate the researchers who have dedicated their time in restoring a part of history that is essential for Africans to know. I so move.
I now put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? The EFF.
Thank you, House Chair. The economic freedom fighters move without notice. Notes that the residents of Ward 27, Kwanyamazane village in Mpumalanga, were evicted from Rondaville farms which they had lodged land claims, and that the residents have been going in and out of court for the past 10 years, and that these farms are under the claims. Further notes that the similar land claim was lodged by Matafeni community in Bombela, that this community has been sent from pillar to post by the ANC government and the courts for over 10 years. Acknowledges that even the area where Bombela Stadium is situated is under the land claim, and that there are about 12 villages who have lodged land claims on the Kruger National Park and that all these claims have not yet been finalized. It does seem that all the claims in Mpumalanga takes ridiculously long to be resolved. Further acknowledges that the ANC government has been moving at a snail pace when it comes to the matters of returning the land back to the black people from whom it was stolen, and that there is no political will, no administrative capacity to deal decisively with land reform, and urges the ANC government to respect and restore the dignity of our people and make sure that the land claims and the land returns to its rightful owners. I so move.
Honourable members, I put the motion. Are there any objections?
We object, Honourable
There's an
House Chair.
objection. Are there any further motions without notice? Cope.
Thank you, House Chairperson. I move without notice that the House notes that Mr. Matthew Bushy McKelvey, a resident of Pietermaritzburg, has officially broken a Guinness World Record for the longest distance covered on a motorcycle in a period of 24 hours. Notes further that Mr. McKelvey achieved this feat on the Pekisa Freeway in Welkom, covering a staggering 3,257 kilometers at an average speed of 200 kilometers an hour on a racetrack. Recognizes that Mr. McKelvey accomplished this remarkable achievement despite being a double amputee. Commends Mr. McKelvey for dedicating the new world record to the awareness of multiple sclerosis and the help he can thus afford for sufferers of MS, and congratulates him for his success, his endurance, and his singular commitment to the betterment of humanity. I so move.
Honourable members, I put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? The DA.
Thank you, House Chair. I move without notice that on the next sitting day of this House that we debate the efficacy of fire pools in the fight against rural firefighting.
Honourable member, Honourable Chief Whip, you know that is not a motion without notice. You know that very well. You know it very well. So I will excuse you for that one. There at the back, is there another? Order, honourable members. Order. Honourable member at the back, is that a motion without notice?
Honourable Chair, yes it is.
You may proceed.
I move without notice on behalf of the UDM that the House notes that the tragic death of a 12-year-old student in a case at N Primary School was shot dead during crossfire after 3 gunmen entered their classroom to kill a teacher, Vusintombela, a 47-year-old man, and was also Speaker of the Nguti municipality. Further notes that this incident took place while students were in class writing their exams. Condemns these killings that took place in an environment that is made for acquiring knowledge. Commends police for their speedy reaction who caught up with the alleged suspects who killed the teacher and the student. Calls for a collective effort between the responsible departments to double up their security and ensuring safety at our institutions of learning. I thank you.
Honourable members, I put the motion. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. Are there any further motions without notice? No further motions without notice. I then get to the first motion on the order paper. The first item on the order paper is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the Majority Party. The Honourable the Chief Whip.
I move that the House, notwithstanding Rule 29, which provides for the sequence of proceedings, resolves that there will be no notices of motion and motions without notice as referred to in the Rule 997G on 9 and 10 of June 2015. I so move.
My apologies, honourable members. I now put the motion as moved by the Honourable the Chief Whip. Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The second motion on the order paper is also in the name of the Chief Whip of the majority party. The Honorable the Chief Whip.
I move that the House, in terms of Section 2, subsection 1 of the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers Act of 1998, and having the due regard to the criteria listed in that subsection, determines the salary payable to the President of the Republic of South Africa at 2,753,000.
Order, honorable members.
And all other numbers thereafter. And in terms of Section 2 of the said Act, determines the amount of 120,000 per annum as that portion of the remuneration of the President, to which Section 8, subsection 1D of the Income Tax Act of 1962 shall apply. I so move.
Honorable members, I now put the motion. Are there any objections?
Yes.
Order. There's objections. Just Honorable Shavambu.
Don't tell me to sit down.
Order, honorable members. Honorable Shavambu, can you just take your seat, please? I'm still busy. I will acknowledge you now.
When do we make declarations?
I'll acknowledge you now.
Please.
I'm still in the process.
But you must caution your Minister of Defense.
Honorable Shavambu, order. Will honorable member take your seat, please? Honorable member, there are objections. I now put the question. Those in favor will say aye. And those against will say no. I think the ayes have it. Honorable Chief Whip.
House Chairperson, the DA calls for division and we'd like to make a declaration as well.
There's been a request for declaration. I will now give political parties who wish to do so up to 3 minutes. One member of a political party to make a declaration. The DA.
Honorable House Chairperson Bagaetso, we are here as Parliament to consider a very important matter. Let's contextualize it. South Africa's economy is only growing at 1.4%. Yet we are proposing that we should give the President a 5% increase. Surely we should recognize the fact that it's due to his bad political leadership that the people of this country are losing their work. And instead we want to pay him more. How can that be? And more seriously, it's the fact that the President incurs many costs to the state. This is a crucial matter that we assess the President. We ask him to deliver a report. He considers it for months on end, and then it takes too long to come here. Yet this House wants to vote today that we must give him an increase. For what reason? And more seriously, President Jacob Zuma, we've already given him a 100-year advance on his salary when we allow him to stay in the house in Nkandla that was built for 200 million rands. We simply cannot say that President Zuma must refuse to pay back money to the people of South Africa, but you and I today want to approve an increase for his salary. Secondly, there's a section here that speaks to the tax matter. I'm fascinated to learn, are there provisions in President Zuma's salary that say he must pay back the fringe benefit tax for his house in Nkandla? Has those provisions been made? But honorable members, let us not make the same mistake that Eskom made. Eskom paid its executives a bonus and an increase, and the executives moved away, and today South Africans are facing load shedding. You and I cannot give an increase to a leader who will leave South Africa's economy in the dark and more South Africans without work while his work gets an increase. So, I am here to request. The Constitution makes it clear that the President is supposed to call and can put forward commissions of inquiry. He put one on the NPA boss, then withdrew it. Now we're paying an exit bonus to Mr. Nxasana. Honorable members, South Africans deserve a better leader and better direction. We as this House in Parliament can make a strong statement that while South Africa's economy is not growing at the right level, the president cannot get an increase that is demanding. And rather, in fact, we must make provision for him to pay back the 52 million rands back to the people of South Africa for his increase in Nkandla. I oppose this motion. I don't believe the president must get an increase. And I think this House must take a strong stance and hold him accountable for this economy going in the wrong direction and for his benefits in Nkandla. I so move. Thank you so much.
The EFF.
Thank you very much, Chair. The EFF stands here to reject with contempt the request of Mr. Zuma, the president of the ANC, to receive a salary increase. As a matter of fact, as taxpayers, as this government, as this parliament, we pay for everything else that Mr. Zuma does. We feed him, we dress him, we pay for his legal fees. We even build a cattle kraal for him. We even build a chicken run for him. The official residences that he occupies in KwaZulu-Natal, in Durban, in Pretoria, here in Cape Town, all are paid by the state. His wives are paid by the state. His children are paid by the state. And on top of that, we still need to give him an additional salary. When workers are asking for a mere 10%, the public servants are asking for mere 10% into their salaries to be able to take care of their daily lives, to be able to afford goods and services whose prices have increased across the board. Petrol prices are increasing again now. Food is expensive. And we come here as this parliament, which is supposed to be representative of the people, to increase the salary of a president. We reject the increase request for a salary of the president. In any workplace, salaries are given to people who are doing something. What is Mr. The man would want to give him the money, and I think we must appeal to the conscience of everyone, member of parliament here, whichever political party you come from. Let us not give this man the salary increase. Thank you very much.
Freedom Front Plus.
Honourable Chairperson, the procedure that
honourable members.
The procedure that we are following this afternoon should be a mere formality. It has been that case since 1994. Each and every year, the practice was basically that the Commission on the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers would make a determination, and that the President would then accept that, amend that, and it will be gazetted. And then the House would come together and move the kind of motion that the Honourable Chief Whip of the ruling party put before the House this afternoon. It's a formality. It should have been like this. It has been like this since 1994. Now the question is, why today, for the first time in 21 years, we have an objection to this motion? Why? Why? The mere fact that we have that kind of objection should indicate to us that there's a problem. And we know what that problem is. When the President stood here last week and he mocked the electorate out there with regard to Nkandla, he should have expected this to happen. We are talking about 246 million rand of taxpayers' money being spent where? On the private residence of the President. Ordinary people out there who every day get up and go to work and struggle to earn a salary and pay their taxes are not all that happy about that kind of reality, and we should understand that. So, Honourable Chairperson, although this should have been a mere formality, I cannot see my way open for the first time in 21 years to vote for this motion. Why? I think it's time to send a clear message to the President, to his own party, and to the world out there that this is not right. We cannot accept that. So in the light of that, Honourable Chairperson, I would like to move an amendment. I hereby move on behalf of the Freedom Front Plus that all the words after that the House be deleted and be replaced and indicate then that the salary of the President be reduced to R1. I so move.
The ACDP. Order, honourable members.
Thank you, Chair. Sadly, the African Christian Democratic Party will not be able to vote for or support this motion. It is very clear and that the mood of the people in South Africa is something that will not support this. And as the representatives of the people that we are here to represent, we cannot support this motion. Thank you.
Cope.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. It's last year when the President stood up here and said that he did not want any increase. And yet he came back, of course, later and said that others gave him that increase. Now, for us to once again rise and say that he must, it means there is a problem amongst some of us, of course. Now, let me emphasize that some amongst here do not agree or refuse to agree that the people of South Africa are suffering. They refuse to agree that more than 40% of the people of South Africa are not employed. That the majority of South Africans who are employed are not getting a living wage. You don't have to go far. Go just outside. The people who are giving you money here, food here, or who are transporting you to go home, how much are they getting? Less than 2,500 rand. And some less than 2,800 rand. You can't truly agree with that kind of thing. And how much is the President getting? Over and above that which he is getting, his wives are getting 2,800 rand. Please listen, 2,800 rand. I'm talking about airtime. They're talking about they're getting about 3,000 rand groceries. And we are talking about millions others, 35,000 rand. Underline 35,000 rand in their pockets. Therefore, each and every month, over and above that which the President gets, 15 million goes into his own massive household. Now, what is exactly happening to the people of South Africa? Please let us not agree with this unless we want to destroy our country altogether. All these thousands, plus all those millions into his home, plus free transport, plus lots and lots of bodyguards, and lots of smiling and dancing. We can't allow this kind of thing. Please don't agree. Thank you very much.
Are there any further declarations? Honourable Chief Whip.
The Honourable House Chair. Honourable House Chair. Oh.
Continue, Honourable Gordy.
Yeah, I had pressed the to talk button because I thought to make declarations, one does not have to take the long journey to the podium.
Unfortunately, your request did not register here, Honourable Member.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Chairperson.
Order, Honourable Members.
I think that unfortunately it appears that politicking seems to affect almost anything and everything that we deal with in the House. The motion that has been put by the chief whip is a product of the report by an independent commission. And I think, as somebody indicated, this has been the tradition, and this was supposed to be merely a formality, because it is a second part to the first part that dealt with our own salaries. It is merely the completion of a process. And I think that in all fairness and in all reasonableness, there is no reason and there can be no basis for members to reject the motion as it stands. I think that the House should allow that motion to pass. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Honorable Chief Whip.
Honorable House Chair, I view the emotions aside, separate from the motion, because the motion is specific according to what the judge has suggested to this House for us to approve, and we support the judge on his own decision. That was not influenced by the emotions from the other side. From our side, we don't believe that somebody is guilty before he has been charged, has been sentenced. Even criminals in court.
Order, honorable members.
Even prisoners, even though they may have killed people, they get fed, they get housed, they get protected, they get all the other necessities of life and rights, because in South Africa we are governed by the Constitution. We are not governed by emotions. In our case, therefore, we don't believe that there's a conflation or the fudging of the views based on the emotions. We believe we must follow the law, and I was quoting the Constitution and the law here, and we therefore will support the judge in his proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable members. Order. Honorable members, I will now put the amendment as moved by the Honorable Mulder to the motion by the Chief Whip of the Majority Party. Are there any objections to the amendment as moved by the Honorable Dr. Mulder? There are objections. I will thus put the question. Those in favor of the amendment as moved by the Honorable Mulder will say aye. Aye. And those against will say no. I think the noes have it.
Honorable House Chair, we call for a division.
No, yes, indeed.
It's Honorable Chief Whip. I'm glad to see you and the Honorable Mulder agree about something this afternoon, calling for a division. Honorable members, a division having been called for, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes. Honorable members, will you please take up your allocated seats? Order, honorable members. Order. I would like to remind honorable members that they may only vote from the allocated seats. When requested to do so, members must simply indicate their vote by pressing the appropriate button below the yes, no, or abstain signs. If a member inadvertently presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. The last button pressed will be recorded as the member's vote when the voting session is closed by the chairperson. The question before the House is that the amendment as moved by the Honourable Dr. Mulder be agreed to. Are all members in their allocated seats? Voting will now commence. Those in favour of the amendment should press the yes button. Those against should press the no button. Those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? All the new members, have you voted? Can the whips just assist with those members whose votes were not recorded? Thank you. Honourable members, the voting session is now closed. Honourable members, order. The result of the division is as follows. Those in favour 89, those against 201, and there's 2 abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Order, honourable members. Honourable members, I now put the motion as moved by the Chief Whip of the majority party. I now put the motion as moved by the Chief Whip of the majority party. Are there any objections to the motion as moved by the Chief Whip of the majority party? Are there any objections? Yes. There are objections. I will just ask the question. Those in favor will say aye. Aye. And those against will say no. No. I think the ayes have it. Honourable members. Honourable members.
House Chair?
Yes.
The DA would like to call for division.
Honourable members, the division having been called for, the bells will be rung for 1 minute.
Khathi sika Joseph Goebbels. Ngoba iloku iphindiwe lento. I-social relief of distress izohlala ikhona njalo angeke iphele. Okwesibili neqembu la lona kade ekhuluma ilungu elihloniphekile liyakwenza nalo sineyithombe zala sasihambisa i-crop khona kodwa bayishintsha i-crop bafaka imbala eblue baze kwafika ama-officials angayihambisani nalento eyayenziwa abayekisa into ababeyenza. Kukhona la ukuthi kuke sibe nama-elections badistribute izinkwa same day ngama-election. So inkinga into ye-social relief of distress nama-food parcels ngoba wonke umuntu uyayenza i-double-edged sword. At least ethina umthetho uyasivumela and asikhethi siyanala singafunwa khona. Ngiyabonga.
Minister of Public Works.
Chairperson, in response to the issue of the Cubans in the Free State, just those who are saying they are talking about substandards. We were with the Cubans in the trenches against the murderous apartheid regime, including some who are beneficiaries of that apartheid who are here today. We defeated them with the Cubans. And we are saying in terms of scientific cooperation, in whatever field, we will continue to work with whoever we want or we are going to benefit. And we hope that our people who were denied education in terms of the scarce skills are going to learn a lot in that cooperation. So we will always encourage such. It's not for the first time, it has been continuing. Our young built environment specialists will have a lot to learn from that. The second one, Chairperson, relating to the issue of education, the Maitland High School in the Western Cape. Certainly, the Western Cape province led by the DA, which has been boasting of service delivery in relation to the books, asking us all sorts of questions. If there's such in the Western Cape, in Maitland High, we must ask why. And we are going to request the minister to investigate that and expose them that they do not care about the education of the black children. Thank you.
Deputy Minister, I first want to recognize the Honorable Minister of Women in the Presidency, and then thereafter I'll recognize you.
Thanks, Chairperson. Just to respond on the issue of the status of women in South Africa. We know that as a country, we have many, many challenges when it comes to issues of equality and equity, including violence faced by women in our country. The various programs created by government are intended to address those issues. If you look at the Equality Act, one of its objectives is to make sure that women are treated the same and work towards ensuring that equality prevails in the country. The recent amendment of the Equity Act are part of those processes where government is committed in ensuring that women's life and betterment changes in our society. And my responsibility is to make sure that it does happen. But what is very, very important when we want to empower women, it's to make sure that young women or young girls do go to school. The education of the girl child is critical in addressing that, and the skilling of women in our society is very, very key. If women are going to be left behind in the empowerment programs, we will not be able to defeat inequality in our society. And violence, as we work with various government institutions, civil society, we need every member of the society to be in the forefront of fighting this scourge. Because this is not a scourge we started today. It has history, patriarchy is part of that, culture, traditions contribute to that. Mindset of the various people in our society also have to change. That is also how women are treated in our society. And I think this House has a responsibility in how best it treats its women, for us then to be exemplary to the whole society. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The Honourable Deputy Minister of Minerals.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Let me start off by thanking Honorable Themba Godi for raising this very important matter relating to ex-mine workers. I can just say that this matter we have been working on very hard, at least for the past 3-4 years, to get it where it is today. A position that is improved far from what it was in the past. Last week on Friday, Dr. Motsoaledi launched Project Koriha, which is a project to pay out money to ex-mine workers. Already we have identified 100,000 that must be paid, and we continue to pay them. On Friday, we started the pre-payment process, and we are going to continue in that regard. The Department of Health, as well with the MBOD, are busy processing another 500,000 that to check how many of them are eligible for payment. So we are busy with that. And secondly, on Monday, this past Monday, we have been working together with other departments, the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform, Department of Agriculture, Fishery and Forestry, the Department of Mineral Resources, the Department and other Department of Labor. We're in the Eastern Cape meeting stakeholders, including ex-mine workers, in a very big program that is rolling out in the Eastern Cape in Ngqeha, the Macadamia Plantations Rollout Program, which is very massive, which includes communities and ex-mine workers as communities and in their own right. So the plight of ex-mine workers is not forgotten. Over and above that, we have, in the past few years, including last year, launched special clinics for ex-mine workers. We've got one of those in Mthatha next to the Nelson Mandela Academic Hospital, where ex-mine workers, we have already seen over 4,000 of them. And we've launched another one in Carltonville, We have seen already over 3,500 of those ex-mine workers. In Kimberley, we have seen close to about 500 of those. They go through a process of examination, administration, and rehabilitation, and payment where they need to be paid. So this matter of ex-mine workers is not forgotten. This government of the African National Congress, siyaqhuba kumcimbi wabasebenzi bezimali.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. That concludes ministerial responses. Did you want to respond to a statement, Honorable Minister? Yes, you may. My apologies.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Okokuqala ngicela ukubulela uMhlonishwa uHlongwe. Ngizawuthetha naye umphathiswa uZokwana. Injalo lento amafama se-Free State, Northern Cape, Northwest, Northern KwaZulu-Natal. Ke sathetha ngalento ngoba biphakanyiswa bendiba ukhona apha usekela mphathiswa ucele ndabona kaphi sendithi yenza ibhekisa lento. Okwesibini kukho Nelson Mandela. Ndililungu lekomiti sihlalo le infrastructure ka government. Besinenhlanganiso nomphathisi wamanzi. Ohloniphekileyo uMinister uMkonyane. Une program yokuzisa amanzi apha eNelson Mandela. Ayiyo joke leyo, yinyani leyo. And uzayenza ngoba seqalile ukuyenza kwamanye amaphondo. Nale ise programming yakhe yokuyenza lento. Ndiyabaza abantu baseNelson Mandela, ndiqinisekile na ubandazi ngokupheleleyo angeke nithethe into engeyonyana. Okugqibela sihlala. Kukhona into yase KSD. Sicela amalungu endlu yowisomthetho, abantu abokuqala ugcina umthetho nomgaqo siseko wesizwe. Babe ngabo abawuqwalaselayo uba bangawuphula umthetho wesizwe nomgaqo umthetho wesizwe. Amalungu asemthatha, abantu bebesemthatha banqandiwe uba bangawuthatha umhlaba bengawunikwanga. Bona baye emhlabeni bengawunikwanga. Bancediswa lilungu lendlu yowisomthetho. Uright urhulumente xa abantu besophula umthetho babanjwe. Inkosi sihlalo.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, that concludes ministerial responses. The Secretary will read the first order.
Consideration of report of Joint Standing Committee on Defence on South African Defence Review 2014.
The Honorable Motimele.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Deputies, Honorable Members of Parliament, guests in the gallery, comrades and compatriots. Honorable Speaker, the ANC supports the report on the Defence Review 2014, and I would like to urge an appeal to all honorable members in this House, all parties in this House, to support this report, because the Defence Review impacts on all of our security, our beloved country, our region, and the entire continent. This Defence Review should be understood as a body of public policy that a government pronounces as its guidelines for the defense objectives and functions of its armed forces. This Defence Review clearly identifies the possible threats to a country's national security, its society, economy, territory, and environment, and provides option to government on how the defense force should deal with such threats. Chairperson, Honorable Speaker, through the numerous interaction with individuals, NGOs, civil society, academics, and state agencies in the consultation process of both the Defence Review Committee and the Joint Standing Committee on Defence, we confirmed what our people expect of the Defence Force. The wide consultation in all more than 450, and especially the representativeness of it led to the conclusion that this defense review can indeed be truly viewed as a genuine product for all South Africans by all South Africans. It is therefore without hesitation that the committee will throw its weight behind the Defence Force to realize the desired end state of the Defence Force as depicted in Plenary Milestone 4 of the Defence Review 2014. As the Joint Standing Committee report provides, the Defence Review 2014 was tabled in Parliament in June 2014 and referred to the Joint Standing Committee for consideration. The Minister briefed the Joint Standing Committee on the Defence Review on 24 October 2014. The Minister formally introduced the Defence Review on 6 November 2014. The South African National Defence Force appeared before the Joint Standing Committee and made presentations on the Defence Review on 13 November 2014. The committee published for public comment in the national newspapers and social media platforms on January 2015. The committee held public hearings on the Defence Review on 20 February 2015. We thank all those South Africans who made public submissions. We are greatly indebted to their contributions. Public submissions did not only support the Defence Review, but called for significant increase in defence expenditure. Amongst those who made public submissions are the Northwest Province, Umkhoda Wesizwe, Military Veterans, Institute for Security Studies, University of Johannesburg and University of Cape Town Centers for the Study of Democracy. The committee deliberated and discussed the draft report on public hearings on 19 March 2015. Let's be reminded, honorable members, that the constitutional mandate of the Defence Force is to defend and protect the Republic, its territorial integrity, and its people. It is in pursuit of this mandate that the Defence Review sets out a clear and ambiguous path for us to follow. At this stage, I extend my gratitude to the Minister and her team for the work well done, and all members of the Portfolio Committee and the Joint Standing Committee on Defence for taking time to consider and deliberate on this strategic intent of our government that will ensure that there is peace and stability in our country and on the continent. Indeed, this policy is a milestone towards ensuring peace and friendship as the Freedom Charter begs earnestly all of us to rise to. The ANC supports the I thank you.
The Honorable Mainir.
Thank you, Speaker. The South African Defence Review 2014 is the most important review of defence policy in more than a decade and has major implications for the future of the South African National Defence Force. The Defence Review is a monster document spanning 344 pages and was produced following 436 stakeholder meetings, scrutinizing 76 public submissions over a period of more than 3 years and cost the taxpayer more than 11 million rand. There are officials, some of whom are present today, who have devoted nearly a decade of their lives to the Defence Review. We must therefore thank them and thank all members of the South African Defence Review Committee who have worked so hard over so many years to produce the Defence Review. Now, the Defence Review, Speaker, made a brutally honest assessment of the Defence Force. The Defence Force, according to the Defence Review, is in a critical state of decline, characterized by force imbalance between capabilities, block obsolescence and unaffordability of many of its operating systems, a disproportionate tooth-to-tail ratio, the inability to meet current standing defense commitments, and a lack of critical mobility. The Defense Review also found that, and I quote, even with an immediate intervention, it could take at least 5 years to arrest the decline and another 5 years to develop a limited and sustainable defense capability. Think about that. It could take 5 years to arrest the decline and another 5 years to develop a limited and sustainable defense capability. There is therefore an element of urgency. Every day wasted talking about the Defense Review rather than implementing the Defense Review accelerates the decline of the Defense Force. But of course, when the Defense Review was finally tabled in Parliament, remarkably given the urgency, it was completely ignored. Repeated high-level interventions by the Honourable John Steenhuisen and the Chief Whip of the Opposition were required first to establish the Joint Standing Committee on Defence and then force the Joint Standing Committee on Defence, I beg your pardon, to begin work on the Defence Review. The fact is that had we not intervened, the Defence Review would still be in the storeroom gathering dust in the bowels of this Parliament. It was clear from the start that my ruling party colleagues serving on the committee had absolutely no intention of taking the Defence Review seriously, despite knowing that every day they wasted accelerated the decline in the Defence Force. The committee fiddled and faffed for nearly a year with the Defence Review. However, in all that time, the committee spent only a couple of hours working on the Defence Review. I, in the end, tabled a document containing 21 proposals for recommendations aimed at strengthening the Defence Review. But when it came to deliberations, the committee were not prepared for me to present my proposals, to motivate my proposals, to deliberate on my proposals, to vote on my proposals, or to include my proposals in their final report.
Speaker.
The committee, for some reason, followed a process which seemed to be
Honorable
designed.
Mainir, can you just pause? Honorable Jackson, what is the point?
Can the member take a question on his proposals?
Not from you. Can I continue?
Proceed, Honorable Member.
The committee, for some reason, followed a process which seemed to be designed to wreck any chance of reaching consensus of the Defence Review and to wreck any chance of opposition parties supporting the Defence Review. In the end, deliberations that lasted no more than 30 minutes, the committee rubber-stamped the Defence Review. The delay in dealing with the Defence Review has caused enormous frustration and has delayed the implementation of the Defence Review until the 2016-17 financial year. Speaker, it is shameful and it should never have been allowed to happen. Now, Speaker, we have stated repeatedly that if the Defence Review does not succeed, the Defence Force will not succeed. We know that the Defence Review is the last best hope for the Defence Force. We also know that there is much to recommend in the Defence Review, including the investment in new capability, especially in the Special Forces, the focus on training of future defence leaders in the Defence Force, and the emphasis on military discipline in the Defence Force. We would therefore have liked to support the Defence Review, but we are regrettably not able to support the Defence Review for several reasons. First, it is clear the Defence Force will trigger a massive new arms deal, including new armoured personnel carriers, fixed-wing aircraft, helicopters and ships, potentially costing billions of rands. However, we never received a detailed briefing on the capital acquisition program, and so cannot be sure if we agreed to the Defence Review exactly what we are supporting. Second, it's clear that the Defence Review will trigger a downsizing or right-sizing of the Defence Force, which may result in the separation of more than 20,000 personnel from the Defence Force, itself costing millions of rands. However, we never received a briefing on the proposed downsizing and right-sizing the Defence Review, and so we cannot be sure what we are agreeing to if we support the Defence Review. Third, the Defence Review utilised a cost estimator model, which we believe may not have correctly estimated the cost of implementing the Defence Review. But of course, we never received a detailed briefing on the cost estimator model, and so we cannot be sure that the cost of the capital acquisition program has not been front-loaded, meaning only the cost of acquisition, as opposed to the total life cycle cost of the capital acquisition program, has been factored into the costing of the Defence Review. And we cannot be sure that the cost of downsizing or right-sizing the Defence Force has been factored into the estimated cost of the Defence Review. If this is so, then the Defence Review has not been properly costed, and the estimated cost of implementing the Defence Review has been massively understated. And of course, this is exactly what happened during the last Defence Review, with such disastrous consequences, where we bought equipment that we could not afford, and which today goes a long way to explain why soldiers are still in barracks, why ships remain alongside, and why aircraft remain in hangars in the Defence Force today. And finally, in the end, the Defence Review's proposed end state, which is a Defence Force comprising of 189,000 personnel, up from 93,000 personnel, 158 combat units, consuming 88 billion rand per year, up from 43 billion rand per year, or 2.4% of the GDP, up from 1.1% of the GDP, is simply not affordable given the tight fiscal environment and competing demands for finance, particularly from the energy sector, over the next 10 to 20 years. And you must wonder, how did we get ourselves into this mess? Well, the answer is simple. The process was flawed, and so the outcome is flawed. The South African Defence Review Committee never discussed the affordability of the Defence Review with the National Treasury. It conducted 436 meetings, but not one of those meetings was with the National Treasury. The Minister evidently forgot the iron law of public policy making, which is you cannot do what you cannot fund. It was, in retrospect, Minister, a monumental mistake. Now, we have a constitutional responsibility to consider the financial implications of policy documents in this Parliament. We cannot sit back and ignore the hard questions about the financial implications of the Defence Review. And so for that reason, we propose that the Minister withdraws the Defence Review from Parliament, and within the next 6 months, first, commissions an independent audit of the cost estatements used in the Defence Review, and second, consults the National Treasury on the affordability of the Defence Review and retables a revised Defence Review together with the military strategy and long-term defence development plan, which is properly costed and affordable in this Parliament. We must ensure that the Defence Review succeeds so that the Defence Force succeeds. And we have to get this right, and the only way to do this, the only way to get this right is to table a revised Defence Review which delivers realistic and affordable proposals to arrest the critical state of decline in the Defence Force. I thank you.
The Honourable Paulson. The Honourable Paulson is actually giving his maiden speech.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Our Defence Force, upon which our sovereignty and safety depends, has been in a permanent state of crisis for some time as a result of bad political and policy choices taken by this government since 1994. That it has taken 2 decades for the revision of defence policy since the release of the 1996 White Paper of Defence raises serious questions about the lack of vision and foresight by both the political and military leaders in the country. Our defense has no strategic ability, as shown by the great loss of life our forces suffered in the Central African Republic. The crisis in our defense is deepened by the lack of clear lines of command. This was vividly illustrated during the recent xenophobic attacks, where the Minister of Defense said on national television that the army would never be deployed to deal with that crisis, as they are only trained to kill. A few hours later, Honorable Minister, you were on national TV announcing that the army was going to be deployed to the townships to deal with xenophobia. What kind of an army gets deployed to reply to an incident of one individual who gets attacked with an okapi? The minister does not know what military jurisdictions there are, and our president would use the military for whatever purposes, as long as those suit him. Our military currently lacks the ability to provide strategic airlift capability, able to project and sustain combat forces over extended distances, the ability to extended maritime protection capability, inclusive of inshore and offshore patrol capability. The backbone of our defense force, the soldiers, as people who risk their lives for our national security, should be taken care of through salaries and working conditions that would inspire them to commit more to the country. All military reservists who are currently employed the same way as farmers employ seasonal laborers must be employed on a permanent basis. Soldiers must be equipped with skills other than those using guns. We must equip our soldiers with social responsibility skills, such as medical skills and capacity to respond to all manner of social crises we face. It is not clear how the proposal to right-size the defense force would affect the livelihood of those who are viewed as redundant and face the possibility of losing their jobs. The EFF calls for a rethink in the manner we go forward to rejuvenate our defense force. While continental stability is important, the country should guard against playing big brother to the rest of the continent. More importantly, our sovereignty, the defense force, must never be used for the protection of the narrow interest of incumbent political leaders, as is the case now. As a matter of fact, Minister, the greatest threat to security in South Africa is not external aggression, but the inability and permanent incapacity of the current government to provide sustainable economic power, jobs, and other basic social services. The inability to deal with the pressing challenges of poverty, unemployment, and underemployment are the major reasons why we should all be scared and afraid. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Mwango.
Honorable Speaker, as we draw our mandate directly from the Constitution, it is incumbent upon us as Parliament to investigate and make recommendations regarding the overall state of fitness and preparedness of our National Defence Force. I think that the Defence Review 2014 report is doing just that. Our Defence Force is a veritable pillar in defence of our democracy and way of life, which extends beyond our borders into the greater regional and continental and ever-changing realm of geopolitics. South Africa's economic and political integration in SADC and in the AU, in pursuit of its strategic and national interest, has led to greater involvement on the continent. Africa remains our core market, and it is imperative, therefore, that we ensure continental stability at all times. Our military is not only playing the role of a national defense force, but also responds to the regional and continental security challenges, where it becomes part of the regional, continental, and international peacekeeping efforts under the auspices of the AU and the UN, respectively. We complement and support the South African diplomatic efforts in many areas beyond our borders and are looked upon as leaders on the continent, bastion of peace and security. As new challenges arise, they necessitate a new defense posture, which necessitates a certain level of military capabilities and readiness. The Defense Review 2014 does not speak to strategic issues only, but it also seeks to capacitate the Defence Force to respond to the new challenges. This report on the review of South African defence speaks to a number of strategic issues, of which all are of great importance and also concern to the IFP. However, whilst it is clear from the recommendations of the Defence Review 2014 that the state of our defence force at this juncture requires urgent and massive resourcing, we must always be mindful and carefully balance the needs of defence against the greater needs of our people. Defence policy must be within our means. With finite fiscal monies at hand, defence must be looked at together with the greater umbrella of national priorities. There is still major disparity on socio-economic level in this country. Basic service delivery and a host of other issues are actually still glaringly looking at the face of this government. And this is why it is imperative that we balance our defense budget with the greater need of our country's development goals. Taking the above caution into consideration, the IFP supports this defense review report.
The Honorable Pongo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers present, Members of Parliament and fellow South Africans. The Defence Review is a direct response to government priorities and government objectives, particularly outcome 3 and outcome 11 in terms of government priorities. It is also a direct response to the National Development Plan, Chapter 14, that we need to ensure that we build safer communities. In this regard, domestic stability should be enhanced through fortified borderline in order to prevent any form of legal entries in the country. In 2010, His Excellency President Zuma and the Cabinet ordered the return of Defence Force to the border duties, mainly to safeguard land, air, maritime borders. This return and this call by His Excellency to the border duties has a significant implication to the resourcing of the Defence Force, because effective protection of the borders requires, among other things, 3 things, which is a sustainable development of a significant number of army units, lightweight aircraft, and helicopters. Secondly, a sustained electronic surveillance with land and air reaction forces to be always available for the counter illegal intrusion. Number 3, a sustained air and maritime patrol to protect the coastline. Border security members is a defense of a territorial integrity and a sovereignty of the country. And this does not only require the Department of Defense to deal with it. It requires the Department of Home Affairs, the Department of Police, Department of Tourism, and the Department of State Security to deal with this matter. So on the issues that were raised by Honorable Menier on the issue of funding, I don't think they're a bit relevant. Because what is required by government in the main, you don't start by pricing. You start by coming with a policy document so that it can guide you. Then you look at the issues. So National Treasury will be able to meet with all these departments that I've mentioned to look at all issues that relate to this funding. The implementation of this defense review, it does not necessarily mean that you must look at the fiscus of the Department of Defense alone, but you will need to look at the whole security class that is responsible for this particular purpose. Honorable members, military doctrine for conventional workforce is not sufficient for the border safeguarding operation due to the nature of adversaries and their activities. Border safeguarding entails in the challenge of overseeing approximately 4,800 kilometers of land border and many points of entry. This task is entrusted to the landward arm of the South African Defence Force, with the assistance of the South African Air Force, as well as other government departments and SARS. There is a vast distance involved in the safeguarding of borders. The land border is about 4,471 kilometers long, while the sea border is 2,798 kilometers long. So South Africa will not have a force to cover this entire border in terms of men and women that are deployed on the ground. Instead of deploying these men and women on the ground, the South African National Defence Force needs to use technology as a force multiplier. Now, the area defense is composed of two very critical issues. It's border control and protection, which entails defending the border against military threat, against crossing by armed and unarmed individuals and groups. And the second one will be it's an area protection, which provides defense in depth against military incursion by external military forces, as well as firm base from where mobile operation can be conducted. Within the primary defensive orientation of the South African Defence Force, there is a high premium placed on firepower, night fighting ability, maneuvering, quick reaction, surprise and technical mobility. In 2013-14 financial year, the South African National Defence Force deployed 2 more companies in the Northern Cape and Northwest as part of phase 4 of the border safeguarding operation Corona. There is an increased number of companies. This number of companies, we should say this, that they are not sufficient to deal with the border control. We've been informed by the department that we need 22 companies as opposed to the 13 that are there now. But this that has happened already has increased the number of soldiers to 2,000. Border safeguarding has been rolled out under the Operation Corona with the phase 3 that is underway. So the first milestone of this defense force, honorable members, optimize border safeguarding capability. It is against this background that, as the African National Congress, we feel that when it is completed, it will make sure that the territorial integrity of the Republic will be enforced, and the South Africans...
Your time has expired.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker.
The Honourable Mwabe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable members of the House. South Africa's Defence Force is currently rated the 4th on the African continent in respect of its military strength and firepower. The question, however, is for how long will we be able to maintain this ranking? In her budget speech on the 19th of May 2015, Honourable Minister of Defence said that the Parliament's continued delay in approving the Defence Review is stalling the immediate implementation of a long-term plan to arrest the state of decline in our military. The NFP accepts the need for parliamentary oversight, but we are concerned that the parliamentary bureaucracy could impact negatively on the preparedness of the South African National Defence Force to execute its constitutional mandate. We are also mindful of the comment made by the Honourable Minister in the budget vote that, and I quote, a critical finding of the Defence Review is the mismatch between resources allocated to the Defence Force and its commitments, unclosed. The NFP also agrees with the Honourable Minister that the demands placed on our Defence Force, both domestic and international, are not sufficiently catered for in its budget allocation. It will be of a great detriment to the country if we continue to neglect the needs of our Defence Force. In the view of the urgency for this august House to approve the Defence Review 2014, we welcome the approval and recommendations of the Joint Standing Committee, and in particular the suggestion that the Defence Review should be sensitive to the gender issues. We are also share the concern of the JSC regarding the implementation of the right-sizing objectives of the Defence Review, in particular to the loss of employment posts proposed in Milestone 1. However, Honourable Speaker, despite our support, and approval for the JSC report. And despite our concern about the defense review and the procedures surrounding its analysis and interrogation by the JSC, the NFP would also like to see the South African Defence Force and Honourable Minister comply with the prescribed accountability and transparency provision. In particular, the JSC should receive regular briefings on operations conducted by the Defence Force, military preparedness of the Defence Force, the defence acquisition, and most importantly, that the replies to written parliamentary questions be made within the prescribed time frame of the Parliament. Through increased cooperation between JSC, the Minister of Defence, and the Defence Force leadership, we'll be able to halt the decline in the standard of preparedness of our Defence Force and ensure that the citizens of our country are adequately protected and saved, and that our sovereignty integrity remains guaranteed. The National Freedom Party supports the report of the JSC. Thank you.
The Honourable Groenewald.
Agbare Speaker, ons moet hier onderskei tussen twee aspekte. Aan die een kant die verdedigingsoorsig en aan die ander kant die verslag van die portefeulje komitee wat nou dan gedebatteer word. Agbare Speaker, ek wil vir die agbare minister sê en almal weet dit. Die kernprobleem van die Suid-Afrikaanse nasionale weermag is finansies. Ons het nou die tweede verdedigingsoorsig sedert 1994. Dit word baie duidelik aanbeveel dat as 'n mens gaan kyk na die take wat opgelê word tans aan die weermag en as ons gaan kyk in terme van sy vredesoperasies wat hy moet onderneem, dan het ons minstens 'n 2% van die bruto binnelandse produk nodig in terme van die begroting van die Suid-Afrikaanse nasionale weermag. Tans is die begroting in die omgewing van 45 miljard. Daar word eintlik aanbeveel dat ons op die einde van die dag 55 miljard moet kry. Met ander woorde, 'n verdubbeling van wat ons tans het. En dan sê dit hang af van die tesourie. Agbare minister, jaar na jaar in die verdedigingsbegrotingsposte stem almal saam, ons het geld nodig. En ek wil nou vandag vir u sê, as ons aan die 11 miljoen rand wat spandeer is aan hierdie verslag, waarde wil toevoeg, dan het dit die tyd gekom dat daar 'n politieke wil moet wees, om dan erkenning te gee en uitvoering te gee daaraan. En dan praat ek nie net van politieke wil van die agbare minister nie, van die ANC regering. Maar dan moet ons ook sê, ons kan nie vra vir nuwe wapentuig, as ons bestaande wapentuig het, soos die Gripen vegvliegtuie, wat tans in die stoor weggewerbe is nie. Want dan het ons nie 'n goeie saak om na die tesourie toe te gaan en te sê gee ons meer geld nie. Want die tesourie gaan sê, maar jy het geld gehad, jy het duur toerusting aangekoop en jy gebruik dit nie. Die laaste aspek, agbare minister, en wat ek ook wil sê oor die verslag is, dit is 'n aanbeveling van die verdedigingsoorsig, dat die twee komitees, naamlik die staande gesamentlike komitee op verdediging en die portefeulje komitee op verdediging, saamgevoeg moet word in 1,2. En die verslag wat tans op die ordelys is, het die komitee gekom en gesê, hulle aanvaar nie daai aanbeveling nie. En daarom sal die Vryheidsfront Plus teen die verslag wat tans op die ordelys is, stem. Want ek wil vandag vir u sê, om twee komitees te hê, is onnodig. Ek weet, dit is 'n oorblysel van die ou 1993 tussentydse oorgangsgrondwet, wat dit bepaal het. Dit het tyd geword dat daardie twee komitees saamgevoeg word in een, want ek wil vir u sê, die portefeulje komitee het maar eintlik net 'n komitee geword vir militêre veterane. Ek dank u.
The Honourable Nesi.
Honourable Speaker, Honourable Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honourable Members. In 1992, the Ready to Govern policy document of the ANC provided a vision of a new national defence force that is loyal and uphold the Constitution of the Republic. A defence force that is accountable to the public through Parliament and respects the rights of the soldiers as citizens. a defense force whose professional conduct is guided by the code of conduct based on universally accepted democratic principles. This vision does not relate to the military command, discipline, and uniqueness of the environment of what has become the South African National Defence Force today. It also calls for the ongoing transformation of the defence, military structures, and better conditions of service. Allow me to educate you without ambiguity. The Defence Force Review 2014 Rejuvenation Strategy, as presented, is found wanting. First, I'm saying this not because of the noises that are put forward by the ISS, which is the mouthpiece of the opposition parties, but by critically examining the real issues on the ground as they unfold. My brief will cover the following points: rationale for the existence of SANDF, succession, talent spotting, and rejuvenation of SANDF. Rationale for existence of SANDF without going to specifics. The SANDF was formed, amongst other objectives, to be much more representative of South African population, especially the black majority. What we see now is a force that is run by remote control by former members of the South African Defence Force. Examples are abound, but one needs to look no further than the current staffing, December 2014, January 2015, where the reserve force was populated with the remnants of the South African Defence Force ex-members. The current bloated reserve force members, who are 85% retired SADF members, ex-soldiers. The question is it because the members are unable to run the SADF, NTF? Do they lack capacity? Or are they being destabilized inside so as to ensure that the transformation agenda is not realized? Honorable Speaker, Minister, we need to urgently find answers to this question. I think Honorable Menier, if he's patriotic enough, can shed light with us in this regard, because he knows too much. Succession is about talent spotting in order to rejuvenate the defense force. Is there such a thing in the current defense force? Clearly no. They never considered such dangers as we are currently training thousands of young MSDS, and after equipping them with military skills, sent them off to oblivion without absorbing them. Yet we have an aging, tired, psychologically unstable members of the defense. Why not, Minister, create a budget and allow most of the old guys to retire? This needs a time frame and targets. Therefore, the minister's argument resonates with the ideals of building a people's army. Unfortunately, the member of FF, which is talking about deploying the SANDF into the communities, is not talking about the army that we're talking about. We are talking about a people's army, an army that is within our society that defends its people and that defends its sovereignty. In conclusion, transformation in SANDF is obsolete. It has no capacity, no agenda, nothing. It is our responsibility as ANC to assist this institution, as it is one of the units of which must drive the transformation agenda in building the people's army. We therefore propose, as is like Minister Tina Sokoba singakunika alternatives. Sizokuxelela thina sithi abaphethe transformation agenda aba wena bakhonkothayo sobamamela nje sidlule because funa sihambe. That we identify within the force people who are capable and who can assist in articulating the interests of the people and of the people's army. People who can ensure that the transformation agenda is taken forward and the decline is arrested as a matter of urgency.
Thank you, Honorable Nessie.
Honorable Chair.
Honorable,
Yeah.
yes, Honorable Member.
Thank you, House Chair. I just want to establish, is it parliamentary for a member to say Concord? That's a role of a dog.
Order, Honorable Members. Order.
Concord can only be done by a dog.
I heard you. I heard you. Yes. Honorable Members, this expression has been used before in this House and it has been allowed. Thank you. Honorable Madisha.
Honorable Chairperson, COPE supports a twofold approach to the defense review. Firstly, this House should ensure that a rule of law applies and is seen to be applying. All must be equal before the law. Secondly, the defense force must have an adequate budget, good organizational capabilities, high morale, and a full state of preparedness at all times. COPE applauds the decision of the committee to receive inputs from the public. This is especially important in developing our country's defense strategic trajectory. Once again, the big issues will be, we want to emphasize the budget. COPE endorses the submission that the defense budget be set at 2% of GDP. Chopping the defense budget is a very dangerous practice with very serious consequences. A defense force takes time to build up and to equip properly. That is why we fully support setting the budget at 2% of GDP. Government must work around that. COPE also fully supports the need for a white paper on defense every 5 years so that our defense force can keep pace with what is happening in peacekeeping while preparing for other eventualities. COPE does not agree that the chief of the defense force should act as the head of the force. The defense secretary is the head and accounting officer. Now, should the antithesis be the case, we want to emphasize we are going to have very serious problems of dictatorships as well as coups, etc. COPE supports CSIR recommendation of chief defense scientists who would take over duties from the current Defense Research Development Board. Any modern defense force has to have scientific research support. COPE also asserts to the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 of 2000, requiring women to play a genuinely significant role in peacekeeping. Let us act in earnest to recruit capable women into the defense force and to provide for the framework and the facilities that will encourage women to join in large numbers.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Your time has expired.
Okay.
Honorable Swart.
House Chair, the ACDP has repeatedly called for an increased budget for the SANDF over many years, and in this regard, we support the Minister and other persons, honourable members, call for 2% of GDP. This is critical for the implementation of the defence review. Yes, the SANDF must manage its budget correctly, but it is undeniable that successive budget cuts have undermined its capability in various areas, including the ability to carry out its peacekeeping mandate. Now, if the funds are not made available, can the SANDF be expected to carry out operations in the rest of Africa, given that it is hard-pressed to maintain even its current commitments? And this is a critical aspect for the defense review. We need more troops, not less, and we need to know the troops are deployed, they'll be properly trained, transported, protected, and supplied. And we in this chamber need to ensure that there are proper funds to ensure this. Soldiers on the ground are unable to question political decisions that may result in them being placed in harm's way. They are expected merely to obey orders. And I'm reminded of Alfred Lord Tennyson's famous words in the poem, The Charge of the Light Brigade. Ours is not to reason why, ours is but to do or die. However, it is our responsibility as MPs to ask the hard questions. We expect honest and full answers that do not jeopardize the safety of our deployed troops, but answers on policy issues. Then when one considers the defense review, we share concerns about deficiencies in oversight and in possibly a degree of lack of urgency. This review came up in 2012 already, and that has been referred to by previous speakers. And we note the proposal of the establishment of a single oversight committee, and we share the view that why should there be two portfolio committees dealing with this? Surely we can save funds, but this proposal was rejected by the Committee on Defence. We note that milestone 1 calls for a reduction of personnel from the current 97,000 to a total of 72,000. We have concerns about that because one could lose experience. And then milestone 2 looks at an increase to 101,000. The question then, and Honourable Bonga, funding is critical. Everyone has referred to that. Even the committee report concerns and raises issues about that. Will there be sufficient funding to manage this process of increase, first reducing and then increasing the number? And then lastly, the question arises whether the National Treasury will be willing to release an estimated 55 billion. Without this funding, the defence review will not be able to be implemented. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Swart. Honorable Mbinda.
Honorable Chair, honorable members, my Africa, sons and daughters of the soil. Honorable Chair, I had a chat with the former president of the country, Mr. Montlante, and then he told Honorable Mbet, the speaker, that as from today, she must not take my time, more especially for greeting. She must only count the time that I'm using for speaking. Yeah, the PAC, as the PAC, we feel that the position of South Africa in the continent and the role we play on peacekeeping and peacemaking requires a defense force with appropriate capacity. The review has correctly found that the state of the defense force is not a good one, and there is a need to enhance the capacity and the capability of the defense force. And the country that neglects its defense force cannot guarantee its security. If South Africa cannot guarantee its security, it cannot guarantee the security of the continent. Africa needs peace and stability to develop. South Africa has a crucial role to play in ensuring peace in Africa. So we cannot depend on outsiders like America and the European countries. That is why PAC supports the defense review.
Thank you very much. The last speaker is Honorable Kamede. Honorable Kamede will speak from his seat.
Thanks, Chairperson. Chairperson, ministers, deputy ministers, members of parliament, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, this is the year of the Freedom Charter. At the same time, we shall salute all the young people of June 16 for their role in the struggle and the life that we have today. Let us again revive our collective memory that the National Development Plan advocates for a state that is capable of playing a developmental role. We wish to suggest strongly that the national security is a fundamental requirement for development, even prosperity. As we build the national democratic society, we indeed should do so through a secure, capable, and a developmental state that can assert its national sovereignty. Domestically, our national security focuses on South Africa's sovereignty and related priorities, which include but are not limited to territorial integrity, constitutional order, the well-being and upliftment of the people, and the growth of the economy. At the regional front, South Africa's national security hinges on the stability, unity, prosperity of the South African region and the African continent in general. It is common cause, therefore, that South Africa, in partnership with like-minded African states, has a vested interest in contributing to democracy, the promotion of economic advancement, and pursuit of peace, stability, development in the African continent. The IMF projects that between 2013 and 2017, Africa will have will have 10 out of 20 fastest growing economies in the world. South Africa must then penetrate these markets and hence its share of intra-Africa trade by negotiated market access for South African exports throughout the conclusion of bilaterals and multilaterals agreement. South Africa must further, both in terms of its continental leadership role and its own national interest, and in partnership with other like-minded African states, play a leading role in conflict prevention, conflict resolution, post-conflict construction, and security sector reform. This will manifest in contributions to UN, AU, and SADC security. In view of what we have said here and more, the future force design will, amongst others, pursue a balance of capabilities that adhere to strategic concept in rapid reaction operations for interventions, expeditionary operations to project forces for protected periods, complex war fighting within typical physical and human dimensions on the battle space. The focus of the future force generations must therefore extend to inter alia, enhance early warning intelligence and domain awareness, projectable medium landward forces with enhanced firepower, maneuver and protection for a range of complex contingencies, versatile littoral maritime forces with credible deep water abilities, and lastly, multi-role lighter forces for border safeguarding and other protection. There are some who in this House and in the public domain have made certain unfounded claims about the Defense Review 2014. These claims mainly pivot on cost, as we have heard. They argue against the Defense Review on two mainly points. Firstly, that the Defense Review is not costed. Secondly, that the Defense Review has not been negotiated with National Treasury. The two arguments I've alluded to, however, demonstrate a complete non-understanding of the government planning cycle and the technocratic nature of planning and budgeting. The building of a financial requirement is always premised on the following steps. Firstly, a policy which informs your approach, the what? Secondly, a strategy which spells out how we are going to achieve the policy, the how. And thirdly, a plan which spells out the action steps and the resources required, with what? A plan only has a validity when there is a detailed resource requirement attached. That is the budget, which is the cost. So until such time as the Defense Force is approved by Parliament, the National Treasury remains guided by the 1998 review. So for us to cost the Defense Review before it has been passed by Parliament, it will be premature. The last but one thing is, since the dawn of democracy, the country South Africa had to deal with different forces from the TPV states. All soldiers were amalgamated into the one united South African National Defence Force. This is the force that protects and treats all people equally. In actual fact, prior to 1994, there were 100 regular soldiers and 400 reserve force for a population of about 36 million South Africans. 5 million of those were whites and the rest were blacks, coloreds, and Asians. These soldiers provided a protection for a few. Today, with a population of plus minus 53, we have a force of plus minus about 90 with a regular and only 23,000 reserve force. And these soldiers protect everybody and every space. Unlike before, when the defense force was used to protect the interests of only the few residents of this country. Last but one, all provinces had Bantustans prior to 94. And as I've said, they all had their mini soldiers. They were all amalgamated, hence the SADF that we have today. As I did say that the ANC supports this report, but I wish to comment on what Honorable Maina says. For your information, in meetings, Honorable Maina only concentrated on acquisitions, only acquisitions. What does the department acquire for arms and so on? Who apply for tenders and so on? The budget for the Department of Defense is only 1.7 of the GDP. Hence, if we adopt this report, it will be 2+% of the GDP. Honorable Maina speaks in folk tongues. He says we must not delay the review because soldiers suffer. But at the same time, he says we must postpone the review for 6 months. Now, which is which? And Honorable Groenewald, I respect you as a former general in the former army. There is only one committee, the Joint Standing Committee on Defense, not two. That is why the committee resolved that we cannot have the other new committee. So there is only one. It's only when we are a Joint Standing Committee on Defense that we deal with the defense review. With this clarification, I then hope that you will support this report. We also appreciate the notes that have been read by Honorable Matisha in supporting the recommendations of the committee and Honorable Swart. We want to thank the Minister and the Deputy Minister and all the officials for all the time to avail themselves when we call them. It must be clear that we call them and they come. And lastly, as a dessert, Honorable Maina also boycotted the workshop on the defense review, where we all had to get all the information and ask questions and engage. He did not attend that workshop. I'm afraid he then misleads his party in most of the things.
Thank you, Honorable Gamede.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. That was the last speaker in this debate. I now recognize the Honorable, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
House Chair, I move that the report be adopted.
Are there any objections to this motion? There is an objection. In light of the objection, I now put the question. Those in favor will say yes. Can I read it? Because others are saying aye, others are saying yes. Maybe I shouldn't say yes. I must use the language that is being used all the time. Those in favor of the report being adopted, say aye. Those against the report being adopted, say no. I think the ayes have it.
Chairperson, will you
Yes.
please note the objection of the DA? Thank you.
The objection of the DA will be recorded. Honorable Ndlozi. Mr. Paulson is standing.
The EFF objects to the adoption of the report as well. Thank you.
It will be recorded. Honorable
Also,
Melda.
the objection of the Freedom Front Plus. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So the report has been adopted. We now allow the secretary to read the second order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Environmental Affairs on Strategic Plan 2015-16 to 2019-20, Annual Performance Plans and Budget Vote 27 of Department of Environmental Affairs and Entities.
Thank you. I now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
House Chair, I move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. I will ask the secretary to read the third order.
Consideration of request for permission in terms of Rule 2493B to inquire into amending other provisions of the Medicines and Related Substances Act No. 101 of 1965.
I will now recognize Honorable Dunjwa, the chairperson of the committee, to introduce the report.
Sorry, Honorable Chair, it will be introduced by Honorable Matlalele.
Thank you very much. Honorable Matlalela, approach the podium.
Honorable Chair and honorable members, we are here to present an interim report of the Portfolio Committee on Health on the Medicine and Related Substance Amendment Bill. The bill was referred to the Portfolio Committee for its consideration and report back to the House. This bill seeks to amend the Medicines and Related Substances Act of 1965 in order to establish a new regulatory authority for all medicines and medical devices called the South African Health Product Regulatory Authority, which will be known as SAPRA, to replace the current Medicines Control Council, MCC. The committee conducted public hearings and, having taken into consideration some of the valuable submissions, the committee decided to make further improvement to the bill as introduced. This therefore necessitated that the committee should go beyond the proposed amendment by including the amendment of Section 18A of the Act. The Assembly, in terms of Rule 249, subsection 3B, however, provides that a committee may, if it is considering a bill that amends provisions of legislation, seek the permission of the Assembly to inquire into amending other provisions of that legislation. The request of the committee, therefore, to this Honorable House is to amend Section 18A, which deals with bonusing. The new amendment that we propose to be included will read as follows. 18A bonusing, section 1 of it, subsection 1, no person shall supply, instead of product, will delete product and replace with medicines, medical devices or IVDs, according to a bonus system, a rebate system, or any other incentive scheme. Subsection 2 of 18A will read as follows: notwithstanding subsection 1, the minister may prescribe acceptable and prohibited acts. In relation to subsection 1, we are proposing the addition of, in consultation with the pricing committee referred to in section 22G. We therefore, as the Portfolio Committee on Health, hereby recommend to the National Assembly, as required by Rule 249, subsection 3B of the Rules of the National Assembly, to be granted a permission to include the amendment of other provisions of the Medicines and Related Substances Amendment Bill as referred to the committee by the House. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Are there any objections to the committee being granted permission in terms of Rule 249, subsection 3B, to inquire into amending other provisions of the Medicines and Related Substances Act 101 of 1965? No objection. Agreed to. The Secretary will now read the fourth order.
Consideration of legislative proposal to amend the Refugees Act 1998, Act number 130 of 1998, submitted by Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs.
Thank you. I now recognize Honorable B.L. Mashile.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I need to indicate that the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs met on the 12th of May to receive a briefing from the Parliamentary Legal Advisor on the Constitutional Court judgment in the Mail and Guardian Media Limited and others versus MJ and others, which is CCT 136/12 of 2013. In respect of the declaration that Section 21(5) of the Refugees Act 1998 is inconsistent with Section 16(1)(a) and (b) of the Constitution, hence invalid. This is a section of the Constitution that talks to freedom of press and other media, as well as the freedom to receive or impart information or ideas. The court, however, suspended the declaration for 2 years to enable Parliament to correct this constitutional defect. The period that was given was 2 years, which will expire on the 26th of September 2015. And Parliament has to attend to this matter now. On consultation with the Department of Home Affairs and the Ministry, and given the time that is left to the expiry date of 26 September 2015, it was agreed for the committee to introduce and correct this constitutional defect. The committee met on 19 of May 2015 to receive the briefing on the committee bill and the requisite memorandum to request the National Assembly to grant permission to introduce the bill. The committee deliberated and agreed on the memorandum as it appears in ATC of 20 May 2015, page 1949. So the purpose of the bill to be introduced is to amend Section 21, subsection 5 of the Refugees Act of 1998, so as to confer a discretion upon the Refugee Appeals Authority to allow the public and media access to its proceedings in appropriate cases. The Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs is hereby, in terms of Rule 238 of the National Assembly Rules, requesting the permission of the House to introduce, in terms of Rule 230, subparagraph 1, the following legislation in the House, namely the Refugees Amendment Bill 2015. So I request your permission, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mashile. I now recognize the Honorable the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Honorable House Chair, I move that the request to be granted.
Order, honorable members. The motion is that permission be given to the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs to proceed with the legislative proposal. Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. The Secretary will read the last order of the day.
Debate on the relevance of symbols in building a new democratic heritage in light of recent campaigns to remove certain statues.
I now invite the Honorable Minister of Arts and Culture, Honorable Mutetwa.
Thank you, House Chair, and honorable members, ministers and deputy ministers, distinguished guests. Since the advent of our democracy,
Honorable members,
our government has embarked upon transformation of the heritage landscape in our country. This has been characterized by building of new monuments, memorials, statues, and museums, as well as changing names of geographical features in honor of the events of epochs and people who have distinguished themselves in shaping the history of our country. Since the proclamation of the Legacy Project by the Cabinet in 1998, a number of legacy projects have been implemented and supported. These includes, amongst others, the Nelson Mandela Heritage Complex in Kunu, Mthatha, and Mvezo, Chief Albert Luthuli Museum, including the restoration of the church in which he was a deacon and where his body was laid in state, as well as the restoration of his grave. Samora Machel Monument, Ngome Monument, and Museum, Freedom Park, Lily's Leaf, and Steve Biko projects, Nelson Mandela statue at the Union Building, and the soon-to-be-unveiled Bambata statue and Matola Reid Memorial Center. Madam Chair, in addition to the commemorative structures that have been completed, there is a wide range of memorials and museums that are still in the making. These includes, amongst others, J.L. Dube Interpretive Center, Inguza Hill, O.R. Tambo, Sarah Bartman Center of Remembrance, Vai Wook Museum, and National Heritage Monument, or the National Heroes Acre. The latter project will culminate in the installation of about 500 statues, an iconic heroes acre that will be stark reminder of those heroes and heroines that have brought us to the freedom we all enjoy here today. Furthermore, the DAC is developing, in cooperation with other departments and provinces, the Liberation Heritage Route. This will include sites in South Africa, as well as across our borders, particularly in the Southern African region. In the area of naming, significant progress has been made. Today, the names of our significant geographical features, such as cities, towns, rivers, dams, and airports, have been changed and thus have been given new identities that reflect the post-colonial and post-apartheid era. O.R. Tambo International Airport, Bram Fisher Airport, Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital, Steve Biko Academic Hospital, John Kani or market theatre, and other significant name changes that have occurred bear testimony to the changing heritage landscape of our country. However, recent spate of vandalism and the banning of statues as calls of eradication of apartheid and colonial symbols, which are correct for the call, but should be discouraged when people take the law into their own hands. No statues should be destroyed. What started as an isolated act in the University of Cape Town soon spread to other parts of the country. We must at this point commend the students of UCT for taking up the issue of transformation of these symbols. But we must condemn those political parties who rode it on the bandwagon of a very important matter affecting our society. It's you. The Cape Town campaign was followed by sporadic acts of statues being vandalized and painted in Port Elizabeth, Uitenhage, Johannesburg, Pretoria, Durban, and Vicksburg. A statue of a horse and a horseman was broken in Uitenhage, such that the horseman was removed from the statue of the horse. But we must also remember that there are other previous incidents, such as the statue of King Tshwane, which was vandalized when it was painted with colors of the old South African flag. And I'm saying that those who have discouraged and condemned what has happened recently should also discourage and condemn what happened earlier on. As part of the response to these incidents and following debates, the Department of Arts and Culture convened a national dialogue of a range of key stakeholders. This dialogue was held on the 17th of April 2015 at the Freedom Park in Pretoria within Tshwane Metro. A range of stakeholders that represented the cross-section of diverse views were invited and participated actively. These included political parties represented here in this parliament. I must say that most of them participated, perhaps with an exception of one or two. But we should thank those who took up this very important matter. We also invited interest groups, traditional leaders, youth formations, and the students from UCT, Rhodes University, and UKZN. The consultative meeting generally agreed and acknowledged that the pace of transformation has been slow, even though the legal framework existed. The meeting was also open to the scrutiny of the very same legislative framework, and we're saying that if there are gaps, let those gaps be dealt with. But whatever we do, we should ensure that we do it within the rule of law. One of the major outcomes of the National Consultative Meeting was the production of 20-point resolutions. Featuring prominently among these resolutions are the following: the intensification of popularizing campaigns about South Africa's key national symbols in schools for greater civic awareness and national consciousness, using existing laws for the transformation, removal, transfer, or replacement of any statue, public symbol, or place name. Government and stakeholders to make emphasis that the attacking and defacing of the statues is unlawful and criminal, and call for law enforcement to act to prevent these unlawful incidents, and the communities to work with law enforcement agencies to report unlawful acts, ensuring that a special interest group, political formations, or cultural communities that seek to protect symbols should do so without incitement or reintroduction of symbols of the past regimes, ensuring that any change or effort to transform or preserve the national symbols should be based on proper and effective consultation with all affected sectors of society. In the event where certain symbols are removed from public spaces, it is preferred that a common pack of symbols and statues with a thematic narrative of the evolution of our history be created as an inclusive space to properly reflect South African history. In the instances where after an audit and consultation, there may be a need for disposal of some of the symbols and statues, these should also be guided by removal and relocation guidelines as per the National Heritage Resources Act of 1999. Creating a special purpose task team to assist with conceptualization, implementation, and the fast tracking of transforming these symbols. Ensuring that the whole process should be driven with a sense of urgency that has a clear roadmap, milestones, and verifiable targets. Madam Chair, I'm glad to announce that I have appointed this task team to take the consultative process to all provinces. And as we speak now, they are in provinces. This is a task team of experts in the field of arts, culture, and heritage. On the 2nd of June, the team was in Limpopo, in the University of Venda, and second one is happening today in KwaZulu-Natal at the Natural Science Museum in Durban. We hope to finish this consultative before the end of July this year and present a comprehensive report that clearly gives the roadmap to the way forward. We think that every one of us have a responsibility to ensure that ours is a changing heritage landscape. And we still urge those who encourage vandalism, destruction, to stop that destructive thinking, because it's not going to help the country. If there are symbols which have to be changed, those symbols would be changed. But even the changing of those symbols would be subjected to a thorough process where everybody would be consulted, including those who would have a different view in terms of those statues. And it is going to happen with everybody participating. We hope that our heritage landscape will change as we continue to do that. Those who are on the sidelines and just talking must come up and join the forces going forward. Because part of the problem is that when you are invited, you don't come. That's a show of cowardice. You are not sure of your views, that your views will come and be defeated. And I hope EFF is going to grow. He's 1 year old now. He's going to grow and support the process here, including the chief whip of the EFF, who has been asked to come and engage. Uthanda ukukhuluma kakhulu la baba, awuze nje sihlangene sonke and raise your views. Sibone ukuthi uhamba ufika. Thank you very much, Chair.
Honorable Chair. No, I wanted to call an order. I did not want to disrupt the minister because the photo...
Honorable member, what's your point of order?
Yes. The photo that was appearing here is not of the honorable minister.
Okay.
I don't know, because I think it's wrong to portray a different image when a different person is speaking.
Okay,
is it the statue of the honorable minister or...
Thank you, Honorable Ndlozi. Your order is sustained. We apologize, Honorable Minister, for the picture that appears on our screens. Honorable Grootbo, over to you.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Minister, Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable Musi Maimane, members and guests in the gallery. When we talk about statues, I want to remind this august house that statues are just inanimate objects built to commemorate a historical event or the life of an influential person. But times change, and statues that commemorate figures from the past, which might have been appropriate for their time, are no longer fitting. But whatever the case may be, defacing, removing, or destroying statues do little to deal with the real issues at hand. As was experienced in Russia, so the communists would know, the statues of Lenin and Stalin are down, but the fight against their ghosts are much harder, close quote. The same applies to our country. The statue of Rhodes might be gone, but the removal of his ghost proves problematic. Honorable Speaker, it must be clear to us all that we cannot erase history and we cannot escape the fact that our heritage as South Africans is intertwined. We as a DA admit that the statue of our colonial past will be a constant reminder of the loss of our dignity. But at the same time, it could be symbolic of our victory over apartheid. The challenge of our time is to build a new heritage and a new vision for an inclusive South Africa. We cannot make a better yesterday. While the ANC and the EFF is focused on the past, the DA is looking towards a future to create a society where there is freedom, fairness, and opportunity. And the questions are not, can these statues be removed? Can these monuments, which can be a bitter reminder of our collective pain, be erased? And the question that we really must focus on, how do we transform society so that the pain triggered by these statues is lessened? And the National Heritage Resources Act makes provision for the removal, renaming, relocation, protection, and the management of our heritage resources. The onus remains on the minister, who may reject or approve the removal or name change. A change in the heritage landscape, Honourable Minister, is not indicative of a transformed society. But transformation places the burden on us to correct history, to correct the wrongs of the past. And the history of South Africa has been unkind to people of color. The contributions made by black people to the collective history of the world remains ignored. And we are here, we are placed in this particular point and place in history so that we can correct the injustice of the past. We are here to make sure that there is fairness in the way in which history is portrayed, and not a skewed history in which the ANC tries to steal the past as belonging to them only. The DA wants to ensure that we create opportunity and freedom for the cultural expressions of all South Africa. Together we can create a new identity, a new history, a new legacy, a new pathway into the future where there is freedom, fairness, and opportunity. In closing, Honourable Speaker, the DA believes that our labour should not be about creating monuments on hills or statues in parks. Labour's monuments and statues are when a young person can find a job, when a person with disability can get access to the ordinary life that others take for granted. And this is the future that the DA envisage. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Grootboom. Mhlonishwa Chiwana.
Honorable Chair, up until yesterday, I was a practicing medical doctor for 10 years, and when I came into this parliament, I was greeted by a monstrous horse-riding statue of a colonial racist
honorable members,
and a mass murderer, both who presided over anti-black racist and white ethnic settler republic in the former Transvaal. I also understand that on the Parliament garden there's a statue of Queen Victoria, who provided the intellectual, cultural, spiritual, annihilation and zombification of black people in Africa as a whole. This Victoria statue holds the symbol of globe, representing the greedy and racist expansions, British colonial project which sought to conquer Africa and its people for the benefit of Europe. We are here today to repeat the clarion call our CIC, Julius Malema, made during his maiden speech, that there must be non-negotiable removal of all colonial apartheid statues and symbols from our public spaces. because they provide the basis of white people to think that they are superior than all of us. Apartheid and colonial statues must fall because they commemorate the racist anti-black Afrikaner republics which exclude black people and treat them with contempt in their own homeland. Statues must fall because they elevate Jan van Riebeeck's idea that this very Cape Town is a white man's discovery and belongs to no one when our people have been living in it for centuries. This is our nation. This is our country. Statues must fall because they represent the conquest of Africa by white Europeans who through mass murder and genocide stole our land and its mineral resources. Statues must fall because in their towering heights and cold shadows lies the painful fact that Africa is a defeated and a conquered people who have since lived as beggars in the land of their forefathers. Statues must fall because they celebrate the property relations that characterize South Africa's economy, where white monopoly capital continues to benefit from cheap and easy disposable black labor. Statues must fall because they provide an intellectual ammunition to think it is right to take concomitant action and massacre black workers when they demand a living wage. Statues must fall because they commemorate convicted criminals, rapists, slave traders, mass murderers who came with this ship bearing only hatred and war against Africa and its people. They must fall because they perpetuate the idea that our continent is just a place to be drained and raped of its resources. They uphold the destruction of our culture, language, and heritage. Statues must fall because they represent white-only towns and cities which were built with sweat, toil, labor, and hated blacks who were in turn rejected as its citizens. Those who seek to educate coming generations about our painful past must rather go to apartheid museums because public space are not meant for self-crucifixion and self-torment. Statues must fall so that white supremacists everywhere in the world may know that there is no place for anti-black racism and colonial hatred in this country. They must fall so that our people can also bring down the legacy left by these colonial statues on our land. The legacies of self-hate, landlessness, illiteracy, cultural and spiritual zombification. They must fall so that the legacy of cheap and easy disposable labor can also fail. They must fall so that the legacy of unemployment and underemployment can also fail. They must fall so that the legacy of lack of land to farm, to reside and to feed our cattle can also fail. Only when colonial apartheid statues, symbols and their legacies have fallen will the dream of the Freedom Charter be fulfilled. So that South Africa belongs to all those who live in it. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chiwana. Honorable Msima.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Order,
It is
honorable
right
members.
to say that symbols represent differing ideas to different peoples at different times. South Africa being made up of many diverse cultures, peoples, traditions, and given our stormy history through the ages of colonialism, minority rule, and now constitutional democracy, has a myriad of symbolic reminders of this past. These reminders, often in the form of statues, are but symbols representing ideas, belief systems, oppression, freedom, sorrows, and triumphs. They point the way forward by remaining as reminders of the past. We must see them in this context. Mr. Hendrik Zima provides us with a concise overview of the nature and perennial relevance of symbols. He states, and I quote, "Concepts and words are symbols, just as visions, rituals, and images are. So too are the manners and customs of daily life. Through all of these, a transcendent reality is mirrored. There are so many metaphors reflecting ineffable, though thus rendered multiform, remains inscrutable. Symbols hold the mind to truth, but are not themselves the truth. Hence it is delusory to borrow them, each civilization, every age, must bring forth its own, unquote. Honorable House Chair, toppling of statute has been an unfortunate practice that has been carried out through the ages by many peoples attempting to eradicate parts of their histories. Unfortunately, this is tantamount to burying one's head in the sand. History cannot and should not be erased. Our history, through the symbols of statues, past, should stand together with statues of the present as a reminder of where we come from, where we are presently, and where we wish to be in the future. They are nothing but the embodiments of ideals as expressed through the great personalities of the time. We in the IFP remain in full support of the transformation within our institutes of higher learning, but call for this to be done in a manner similar to the peaceful transformation that occurred in government as we became a democratic and free South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mngango. Mchabiseki Shlembe.
Honorable Chairperson, members of the Honorable House, South Africa, along with nearly 190 other countries, is a signatory to UNESCO World Heritage Convention, where the emphasis is on the notion of collective universal cultural rights. Signatory states have an obligation to observe that each culture has a dignity and value which must be respected and preserved. Our Constitution and legislation also makes provision for the protection of our collective heritage. And as South Africans, we should respect that. The recent campaign to remove certain statues have created division amongst the people of South Africa. Whereas we respect the right of people to have strong views, we must be cautious of ill-considered actions which are high in symbolism but thin on substance. Whilst we support the revolutionary change that seeks to address the negative history of the past, we should be cautious that we do not divide our society. We favor an evolutionary approach based on well-considered intentions and the rule of law. Above all, the NFP believes in political engagement which is rooted in dignity. It cannot be said that the recent defacing of statues and flinging of human waste at them resembles a pragmatic approach to change, nor a dignified one. Most importantly, we do not believe that it has contributed to the nation building either. The campaigns to remove certain statues have confronted us with a question which has been lingering long in the minds of our people. How do we build an inclusive nation? Do we build by destroying or do we build by creating? The NFP believes that the answer lies in creating. Let us not try and sanitize our collective history and pretend that it did not happen. Rather, let us focus on creating a new history for future generations to come, which shows that we had to build a nation from diversity, mindful of our painful past, yet with hope for the future. Let us build more statues to reflect our history as it is unfolding now. It is a statue. If a statue is truly offensive to the dignity of our people at large, let us follow correct procedures to remove them and place them where they can retain an educational value and continue to accurately reflect our past history as it was. But let us not bow to ill-considered empty gestures that do nothing but sow division amongst our people, and continue to build a new democratic heritage that accurately reflects who are we and the values we embrace. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Filtani.
Thank you, Chair. Steve Biko once said, as long as blacks are suffering from inferiority complex as a result of 300 years of deliberate oppression, denigration and division, they will be useless as co-architects of a normal society where man is nothing else but man for his own sake, unquote. In this regard, he called for liberation from mental enslavement. The historical and heritage symbols play an important part in defining our present, past, and are a reality upon which a discourse on defining the future or explaining the past can be located. We do not need statutes whose presence insults us to remind us of our past, any more than Israel needs a statue of Hitler to remind Jews of how their state came into being. No, we have history books and classes to teach us that. On the other hand, removing them without addressing the social constructs that place them there in the first place becomes a political farce that hurls insult at the generations who suffered bona fide pain and humiliation at the hands of those whom the statutes celebrate. However, the debate about symbols and building a democratic heritage cannot be an isolated one, but an integral part of the broad socioeconomic transformation of our society. When the youth of our country begin dismembering symbols of the past, they are not only referring to our colonial past, but to us, their parents and leaders in charge. They are telling us, as we have been every day, through service delivery strikes, through violent and always organized discourse, such as the xenophobic attacks, that they have lost faith in us, their leaders, that our actions no longer represent their interests, that they have waited long enough for us to do what they are now doing themselves. Can anyone amongst us who have trivialized to politicking their earnest frustrations explain why we still have demarcations such as NU1, NU, NY1, and NU in Mdantsane, just to quote? Have we offered them an education that rightly empowers their mind and fills it with the belief that they too will be productive contributors of their society one day? Honorable members, it is becoming increasingly difficult to reason with a populace that watches this leadership indulge in ridiculous acts, defends them unreasonably, and then turns around, says to it, be reasonable. What should be done with our statues and symbols is the least of our problems. Hendrik Verwoerd once said, and I paraphrase, why spend money educating the black child when all we want them to be is our tea girl and garden boy? Now compare that with the kind of education that you get. I want to say, we emphasize that it must not be divorced. This debate should not be divorced from the building of our united South Africa that takes cognizance of history, heritage, and collective memories. And in closing, I want to say the dictate of the Constitution that South Africa belongs to all who live in it demands that we collectively, as a people, define our legacy, history, and heritage. I want to say thank you.
Raleboga Refiltani, Mutlutlegi Tsuledi.
Ke a leboga
Honorable
modulasetulo
Chair.
a tshwereng mokobobo.
I was just
Honorable,
saying,
wait, I didn't recognize you. Wait, can you sit down, Honorable Tsuledi? Honorable,
no, I was saying that taking the color of the jacket, I hope she's going to agree that statues must fall. Because if she's not doing
Honorable-
that, it's going to be very
Honorable,
disappointing to
Tsuledi,
that
continue.
revolutionary
Please sit
color.
down.
You can't negotiate that
Honorable
apartheid
member,
statues
please
must
sit
fall.
down. Continue, Honorable Tsuledi.
Ke a leboga modulasetulo ya tshwereng mokobobo. Ke ise hlompho ho ditho tsa lekgotla la ketsamolao. Ke re ho maAfrika Borwa ka bophara dumelang. Pele nka kena tabeng ya ka ya sehloho, e re ke leke ho hlalosa ho mohlomphehi o qetang ho botsa bokgubedu bona. Ke tla mo hlalosetsa hantle ka puo ya ka e ke tswalang ka yona hore mna phakathi kwe-ANC ne-SACP andingomqakwe, andiloveza ndlebe kwaye andisosizana nini. So i-red le endiyinxibileyo ibonisa apho ndivela khona. Botjhaba mona Afrika Borwa bo theilwe ka ho kenyeletswa ha batho ba neng ba kotetswe pele le ka ho ntshetsa pele ditsela tsa kgethollo mabapi le kaisano le sepolotiki. Sena se etsahala le ka mora diphetoho tse tlisitsweng ke mmuso wa African National Congress ka ha diphetoho tsena di etsahala ka monyebe hobane ho dula ho ena le tshita e ka sita le dinyewe tse tliswang ke ba ntseng ba dumela hore kgatello ka ba basweu e santse e lokile Afrika Borweng e ntjha. Ke ka baka lena ho fetola ha mabitso a mebila mane Pretoria Tshwane ho phepetswa makgotleng a dinyewe. Sena se bontsha hore le ha re fumane tokollo ya sepolotiki ka selemo se sa 1994, maemo a jwale a bontsha a santse a re etsa makgoba, a re utlwisa bohloko mme a re hopotsa ho ka ho nkelwa moruo le ho hatellwa moruong. Sena ke hobane ka mehla batho ba rona ba lokela ho tobana le diemahale tsa batho ba re sutlileng ka dilemo tse fetang 500. Chairperson, a walk down Adderley Street in Cape Town, just behind us, is a reminding example. From a sitting, relaxed, yet dominant statue of Jan Smuts to that of Van Riebeeck. A walk by an African, colored, or a Khoisan descendant is a painful reminder of subjugation. A similar experience is felt in Bloemfontein, Pretoria, Pietermaritzburg, Graafrenet, and elsewhere in South Africa. The Africans, colored, and Khoisan are still regarded as people who do not have the heritage. When we raise the need to transform the landscape to feel accommodated, we get lame excuses that are about excessive cost implication and inconvenience to the city maps and direction. The guardian of white monopoly and excluding heritage do not care about the painful feelings of the previously marginalized groups in this country. In doing so, these groups undermine the sacrifice that leaders, kings and queens such as Maqoma, Yinza, Tsetjwayo, Moshweshwe, Mantatisi, Chief Lituli, Solomon Mahlangu, and Rizondo, and others. I want to remind this House that people lost their lives in order for us to be free. A freedom cannot be separated from heritage. This resistance towards transformation is a betrayal of the struggle. It is our duty to continue to fight until South Africa's heritage landscapes tells a story of all South Africans. Sihlalo, kubalulekile ukuba xa sixoxa ngenguqu kumasiko nenkcubeko yethu, sijonge nalamagama angendawo awemveli kodwa asetyenziswayo ngenxa yokuqhiqiza nokuxhathisa kwabo bakhusela inkqubo yobukhoboka ikanye nobukolonial. Zimbalwa kakhulu idolophi nezixeko ezikwaziwa ezitshintshwe amagama ukuhambelana nenkqubo kumaxesha esiphila kuwo nokubonisa izimvo zesininzi. Kwezo nzame zenzekileyo ukubonakalisa inguqu, singakhankanya omasipala abafana noMsunduzi, Pietermaritzburg, iMangaung, eBloemfontein, umasipala weNamakhoyi oseSpringbok, iMbombela eNelspruit kunye nezinye. La magama kufuneka etshintshiwe. Awakhangeleki engamagama oqobo aye engasincedisi ukulwa nezinguqu kufuneka zenzekile kwinkcubeko yethu. Kunyanzelekile ukuba sikhawulezile ngale nkqubo yokutshintsha amagama ngoba asikhumbuza ubukhoboka. Sifake lawo amagama oqobo nafunwayo sisininziseli. Kutheni siza kuba neMpuma London, East London eMzantsi Afrika? Yintoni iFree State? Yintoni iKwaZulu Natal? Chairperson, Nelson Mandela, the father of our democracy, stated during the official opening of Robben Island Museum in 1997, I quote, "Our cultural institutions cannot stand apart from our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. Within the context of our fight for democratic South Africa and the entrenchment of human rights, we cannot afford exhibition in our museums depicting any of our people as lesser human beings. Sometimes in natural history museum usually reserved for the depiction of animals, can we continue to tolerate our ancestors being shown as people locked in time?" Close quote. In this, Nelson Mandela was giving us as collective citizens, a lead to take the transformation of the heritage sector to the next level. Mandela thought that the people who tortured him had changed. He thought the people he negotiated with during the CODESA were honest. He did not know that the sooner the very same people that he had forgiven will block the very same nation-building process that they wholeheartedly promised to spearhead. In South Africa, every day, Africans are reminded about their history and the suffering that is less important than those of the horses and dogs. This is because the depiction of history captures horses and dogs to the exclusion of many women, black or white, who perished in the concentration camps. It dispels the suffering of children who died during the time of wars. Despite concerted efforts to transform the narrative of the 1899 to 1902 South African wars, colonial guardians still relate to this as an Anglo-Boer war. This is undisputed history evidence that Africans, Indians, Chinese, Russians participated in this war. Motsamaisi wa mosebetsi a tshwere mokoko. ANC e tshitlallela boleng ba phediso ya kgethollo le ho aha Afrika Borwa e kopaneng. Ka hoo, ho bohloka hore phetolo ya matlotlo a rona e etswa ka ho akaralletsa ma-Afrika Borwa ohle. Re leboha University ya Stellenbosch ka ho tlosa sehopotso se sebe sa Verwoerd bekeng tse pedi tse fetileng. Motho eo nalane ya hae e tletse boikakolopi ba kgethollo bo tshabehang mme bo sa hlokeheng sebaka botjhabeng ba rona. ANC e etsa kgweletso ho mafapha ohle a puso ho tlosa ka molao diemahale le ditshwantsho le dihopotso tsohle tse phahamisang kgethollo efe kapa efe ho di tlosa ka molao. Mohlomong sena se tla fana ka thuto ho bao ba santseng ba keteka botaki ba apartheid ka hore baetapele ba apartheid ba hlwahlwa. Ke ha fela tsena di tlositswe mo Afrika Borwa e tla qala ho utlwa monate wa tokoloho. Ke a leboha.
Re a leboga motlhomphegi Tsoledi. Agbare Litmelder.
Geachte voorzitter, as mens luister in die debat is daar basies twee benaderings wat gevolg kan word as jy oor standbeelde, oor simbole, oor beelde praat. Die een benadering is 'n insluitende benadering, ander een is uitsluitend eintlik. Wat is die probleem? Die probleem is dat ons 'n verdeelde geskiedenis het om baie redes. Die Suid-Afrika van vandag het eers 1910 tot stand gekom. Dis maar 100 jaar gelede. Dis 'n lang geskiedenis van voor 1910 op verskillende maniere. Afrikaners is met die oorlog ingeforceer hierin. Die gevolg is dat hier verskillende interpretasies van die geskiedenis is, verskillende helde is. Die uitsluitende wyse is om te sê net wie tans in beheer is, besluit wie's die helde, besluit wie uiteindelik die standbeelde is daar en verwyder alle ander standbeelde, ander verdere geskiedenis. Jou probleem daarmee is geen regering is permanent nie. Kom ek gee 'n voorbeeld. Kom ons aanvaar die PAC is die volgende regering hierna. Dan moet ons nou die Hani standbeelde, die Zuma standbeelde verwyder en vervang met Sebokwe en Makwetu. En dan aanvaar ons daarna kom die EFF nou aan bewind, dan moet ons die agbare Malema en agbare Ndlozi standbeelde oprig in elk geval en die ander weer 'n keer verwyder uiteindelik. Nou die probleem daarmee is, as u na die Britse parlement toe gaan, jy kan gerus so toe gaan, dan staan daar 'n standbeeld van Cromwell. Hy het die monargie vernietig en eintlik die parlement tot niet gemaak. Daarna het dit weer omgedraai, hy het Charles I se kop afgekap, die koning daar. As jy eendag aanstap, dan staan Charles I se standbeeld daar en Cromwell se. Al twee is nie noodwendig gewilde figure nie, maar hulle verteenwoordig die geskiedenis. Kom ek vat 'n ander voorbeeld. As jy na ons kasteel gaan kyk hierso in Kaapstad. Hy het 'n geskiedenis wat verskillende interpretasies het van onderdrukking of kolonialisme. Bo op die kasteel het die vlae gewapper van die verskillende tydperke. Ek hou nie van die Britte nie, ek hou nie van die Union Jack nie, my ouma was daar teen vanweë die konsentrasiekampe, maar die Union Jack het daar gewapper, die Hollandse vlag, al die vlae. Dit was die insluitende benadering. Die ANC het beswaar gemaak, al die vlae is weg, ons het nou slegs die een benadering. My ouma Maria Mulder was 16 jaar oud in die konsentrasiekamp waar haar ma dood is. Haar boetie Gerry is dood op 3 jaar, omdat mense wie se ouers nog geveg het, of die pa nog geveg het, halwe van die kosrantsoene gekry het van mense wat reeds oorgegee het. Die kleintjie is daar dood, sy moes as 'n 16-jarige die kleintjie begrawe daar. Ek is geleer om my voorouers te eer en respek, soos die almal hopelik ook geleer het. Nou is die vraag, daar is 'n monument opgerig by Meerbank, ook waar Gerry se naam staan. Moet ons dit vernietig? Moet ons dit tot niet maak, as hy gesien het as 'n geveg teen Britse imperialisme? Die Vryheidsmanifest sê Suid-Afrika behoort aan almal wat hier woon, swart en wit. Daarom glo die Vryheidsfront 'n insluitende benadering is die verstandiger benadering. Kom ons voeg by. Ek het persoonlik voorgestel jy moet 'n groot stam van meneer Mandela hier kom reeds in 95 dat dit nie gebeur nie. Ek hou niks van koningin Victoria nie, maar sy staan hier buitekant omdat dit deel is van ons geskiedenis. Dis die uiteindelike manier wat almal insluit na buite toe en nie wegjaag nie. Ek kan nie vir my sê ek is deel van Suid-Afrika. My belastinggeld is goed, maar nie my helde en nie my verlede nie. Dan gaan ons nêrens heen met die toekoms betref om 'n nasie hier saam te stel nie. Ek dank u.
Dankie, agbare lid Mulder. Motlotlegi Relekota.
Thank you, Chair, House Chair. My dear friends, I do think that we must live life as is and not as we wish it. I've been thinking, sitting there and listening to this debate, if the Bible did not include the word devil, what would be the meaning of God? Or if the word devil was the only one spoken about in the Bible, and the word God not there, what would be the meaning of devil? Because meaning comes from these contradictions in life. If there was no slave master, how could you talk about a slave? Because against what would it take meaning? It would mean nothing. So the reality of life is we never can tell history. We can never talk about each other. If there were no tall people, there'd be no short people. If we were all the same height, life would lose meaning. Words would mean nothing. I do want to say, when we defeated apartheid, it is because some human beings upheld apartheid and others were against it. But if we are going to let our children and great-grandchildren know what is good and what is bad, we've got to tell them both about God and about the devil. We've got to say about all of this. If we take something out and say this is not allowed in life, then we will not be able to say anything. Even when people improve, change from what they have been wrong about and become something else, we would not understand it if there is not two opposing conditions. And I say, when therefore in 1994 we came to power, we had to deal with a number of issues. Statutes and statutes. There were laws which said it is wrong to cross a road or a junction if the traffic light is green, or rather is red and not green. That was right. It was right whether we were in apartheid or after apartheid. It is still right today. You don't cross a junction if the traffic light is red. It's wrong today, just as wrong as it was in apartheid. So that being the position, we had to choose which are the right things, which are the things that are not right. And systematically, therefore, we had to decide what are the things to get rid of. Please listen, man.
Your Get time rid of the things. has expired. Honorable member.
I've made the point.
The Honorable, the Reverend Mishwe. Order, honorable members.
Chairperson, the ACDP welcomes this debate. on
Order,
the relevance-
honorable members. My apologies, honorable Reverend. Please, there is a lot of noise. Can you retune the reverend's time, please? Honorable members, please don't cause the delays because of the noise. Thank you. Go on, honorable.
Thank you, Chairperson. The ACDP welcomes this debate on the relevance of symbols in building a new democratic heritage in light of recent campaigns to remove certain statues. Some of the actions by haters of our colonial past was shocking and in some cases disgusting. When protesters go around carrying human waste and splashing it on statues, their own self-respect and dignity is undermined. Such people, particularly from institutions of higher learning, should be encouraged to rather use debate and persuasion to object or advance their beliefs and not subject themselves to such unacceptable behavior that no self-respecting person would resort to. We all know that South Africa has a shameful past where many atrocities were committed in one form or another. There is nothing we can do to change what happened back then, nor should we attempt to blot it out. We should not allow anger and bitterness over our evil past to dictate South Africa's future. We should not be angry forever because that would affect our personal and country's health and relationships with one another. Chairperson, the ACDP supports government's policy on national reconciliation, nation building, and social cohesion. We believe much of the country's past should be preserved alongside the new South African ethos and unifying symbols we are creating. And those who disagree must argue their case rather than resort to criminal activities against our national heritage. The value of preserving history is even acknowledged by the medical profession. When a patient visits a doctor for the first time, they are asked about their medical history. Depending on the severity of what they are suffering from, they might even be asked about the medical history of their grandparents. This information is needed to decide on the best possible treatment. Statues and monuments are part of our history. Our children and future generations will learn and remember. As we erect new statues and create new symbols, we should keep as much of the past as possible in the interest of national reconciliation and nation building. Thank you.
I wanted to ask the Reverend a question.
Honorable Ndlozi, please don't do that. You have not been recognized, you continue to speak.
Sorry,
I could take it here.
Thank you, Honorable Mishwe. Thank you.
I wanted to ask.
Honorable Mishwe has gone. Please sit. Honorable Jafta.
Honorable Chair, I think as South Africans, we must welcome the revival of the debate about how South Africa should confront the symbols of the apartheid era in order for this country to focus on building a new democratic heritage. However, we must also remind the people that South Africa had attained its political freedom and that people have the freedom of speech as stated in the constitution of this country, therefore have the right to bring forward any matter for debate which is necessary to build the new South Africa. We therefore must condemn the violent destruction of any symbol of the past or present by any South African. Honorable Chair, we know as a fact that the history of our country is bad and painful to others, but we cannot throw it away as if we want the people to believe that there was no South Africa before 1994. We need to know where this country come from, and the generations to come must know the real history of their country too. That is why, Honorable Chair, the AIC believes and supports the idea that those symbols or statues representing the apartheid era, which are offensive to other citizens of this country, must be taken away from the public sites and be kept in special museums and heritage sites for those South Africans believing in them and for the historical records. When engaging in these debates, trying to heal the bitter wounds of apartheid, we must reassure every citizen of this country, black and white, that they have future in a democratic South Africa. We must remind ourselves and South Africans about the ideas for this country to adopt the new national anthem and the new national flag in 1994. We must call for all South Africans to unite in a common sense of belonging and national pride. Honorable Chair, I wish to remind this House of Marx's words when he said, I quote, "Men make their history, but do not make it just as they please. They do not make it under circumstances chosen by themselves, but under the circumstances directly encountered, given and transmitted for the past," close quote. Honorable Chair, the renaming of towns and streets should be part of national drive to make South African cities and streets names sound more inclusive and less reflective of the apartheid past.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Thank you.
Motlhomphegi Tloyam.
Thobela. Modulasetulo ke a leboha. Ke no kgopela ho bua ka Sepedi. Ya. Modulasetulo nna ke nyaka ho tjea sebaka se ke re re mo re leng ngwana ka baka la
Order.
re mo re leng ngwana ka baka la tshwarelo e nkile ra fa batho ba ileng ba re hatella before 1994. Batho ba ileng ba re hatella before 1994 a ba lebo tshwarelo e nkile ra ba fa yona ka baka la hore ke nahana hore tshwarelo e re ile ra ba fa yona e leader ke ANC. Nka ba lebo hore revolution ya rena ile a fediswa ka dipoledisano e seng ka ntwa ya madi. So ka mantswe a ke bolela fela hore di statue tse re nang le tsona di tsamaisana le mantswe a ANC a rata ho bolela hore we had a colonization of a special kind. Koro ka lebelela mo South Africa ha ona ntho e reflecta batho ba bantsho. Di statues tsa rena le maina ana se ya rena ka fa honorable minister rena bele ka gang re a support hore ka nnete ka speed ka mgo ka kgonalang ha dilo tse jotlhe di change ka semolao. E fela re dumellane le batho ba nyaka ho berekisa ntsela e o causa another bogus revolution. Revolution e lo raina principle. A ke tsebore bogus ke inga Sepedi. But languishisha revolution e lo reng ke di emotions aina principle. So ntori khopelang kuri mmusho wa ANC ka e ro tlhompha ona bjale o tsebe hore di stage je di rutsa botlhoko kare batho ba borena he ba tsena ka ra toropo ba bona stage sa Paul Kruger ba opola ka mogho ba treatiwang ka ona le mo ba berekang ka ona. Batho ba ne ba re hateletse ba sa ba hopotsa hore no le winne mmusho mara re sa laola di strata re sa na le di statue ka mahara toropo. So ke kgopela hore le ba nnete restamake, and I request and I humbly request from the ANC or please lead this process as less as alemo mmusho akina ba 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 etang ba tšhela di-statue tše ka tše ba di tšhelang ka tšona di ka boela morago he le ka leader this process gore mafelelong re be le South Africa e le re ya bontšha gore bontši ba yona e dutše ke batho ba bantsho le e le gore re amoela merafi e mengwe e le gore le bona ke badudi ba South Africa ona bjale. But we must never forget gore naga e ke ya Africa and e tshwanetse e reflecte majority ya batho ba ba dulang fa. Ke a leboga ba lebaka.
Ra leboga re tlo ya mma Mchabiseki Mbinda.
Honorable Chair.
Order, honorable members.
If we are very serious, more especially about transforming this country, I'm talking about radical transformation. We need to start by changing South Africa to Azania. South Africa is a colonial name, I must remind you. And a country cannot be named by its geographical position. So Azania is the name that must be adopted by this House. The PAC agrees with the concept of symbols and statutes in building a new society. The relevance stems from the fact that history must be depicted correctly and accurately. We currently live in a society that is reflective of a false history, a highly incomplete history and history that reflects white supremacy life. Going to the recent events of removal of statues as the PAC, we support the removal of statues of apartheid, but propose that they should be kept in a safe place or storage and not just to be destroyed. The history of a transformed nation cannot be depicted by a prominence of individuals who perpetuated the genocide. People like Paul Kruger, No Rhodes, and many other colonial generals. As we can see, you do not find the statues or symbols of nurses and doctors. We find those of bloodthirsty military individuals. It is clear that the concept has been violated and is reflective that our society has not transformed. Where are the statues of our African heroes like Thomas Sankara, Kwame Nkrumah, and Julius Nyerere? What's more, the history of the last state of the struggle has been depicted partisan, as we do not see critical people on those symbols and statues. People like the longest political prisoners in South Africa happens to be Jafta Masemula. He was sentenced in 1962 until 1989. You must count 27 years, and there was no break to Victor Verster or Paulsmo. The first modern time political prisoner to be convicted in South Africa is John Nkosi of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. Besides, from a policy perspective, we have personalized statues too much. The statues we have represent personalities rather than events. As the PAC, we don't see symbols and statues that are depictive of political prisoners and prisoners of war and the hanging of many of our soldiers. Likewise, we don't see glorified places like Mapungubwe being displayed prominently in our social space. Neither do we see great trade that happened before the arrival of the European settlers. Isweletu?
Raleboga Rembinda. Mutlutlegi van Damme. Order, honorable members.
Honorable Chairperson, South Africa's first democratic election signaled an era of hope. Hope for a new South Africa, hope that all South Africans would finally be equal, hope that Uhuru would be realized. The South Africa we live in today is sadly not yet Uhuru. The recent spate of protests, vandalism, and destruction of statues said to represent apartheid symbolizes the continued disdain of many young people for conditions in present-day South Africa. Many young South Africans, particularly the born frees, have too realized that it is indeed not yet Uhuru. Our born frees have realized that the struggle continues, and Uhuru and our dreams of a rainbow nation remain elusive. Film Week recently ran a cover story about young people living in South Africa. The magazine called them young, black, and angry, and correctly so. While our young people now have the political rights that the generations before them didn't, they too still fight a struggle. Our born-free struggle is not one for political rights, but against rampant unemployment and an education system that sets them up for failure. A recent South African Institute of Race Relations study on the born-frees found that government has failed to provide a great majority of this group with decent schooling, vocational training, access to the labor market, and business incentives. This is indeed true if one looks at the statistics. The majority of primary schools cannot provide adequate training, writing, and mathematical skills to most learners. For those that overcome these challenges and make it to university, only 38% are likely to obtain their 3 to 4 year degrees within 5 years. Even for those who graduate, they're unlikely to find work, as the unemployment rate for graduates has doubled since 1994. That is why today, Honorable Chairperson, 70% of young black people between the ages of 15 and 24 are born-frees, are unemployed. For colored people of the same age, the unemployment rate is 55%. For Indians, it's 40%, and white people, 22%. The ANC is failing our young people, and it is failing young black people in particular. As a result of these dire conditions, Honorable Chairperson, it is no wonder that our young people feel a great sense of alienation from government, and in particular the ANC, and that is why they've taken to the streets to protest. The statues movement is yet another in a long list of service delivery protests that have engulfed South Africa over the last number of years. Some, of course, saw the statues movement as an opportunity to jump on the bandwagon of populism to fuel the indiscriminate destruction of statues, including the vandalism of a plaque in the Eastern Cape commemorating Satgir Batman's life. It is absolutely important, honourable members, that we as parliamentarians have constructive discussions about our shared public spaces and what they need to look like. No one has a monopoly on the truth. Universities, as the intellectual hearts of our country, should also be leading constructive debates on this important issue. I emphasize constructive here. Flinging poo and singing one settler, one bullet is in no way helpful. In having these constructive discussions, we need to do so in honesty. If we are honest with ourselves, the truth is in plain sight. While it is indeed apartheid that has caused many of South Africa's trouble, the biggest portion of the blame lies with the party that has governed this country for the last 21 years. It is not the statues that cause our problems, it is the ANC. It is the ANC that has failed to create a fully inclusive country. It is under the ANC that unemployment has soared. It is under the ANC that children in townships and rural areas continue to receive inferior education. My challenge today to South Africa is for us to rise to the intellectual challenge of incorporating statues into powerfully inclusive spaces that affirm a vision for the future. We need our public spaces to be a constant reminder of our past, so we remember never to go back. It is much easier to tear down than it is to build. Let us choose reconciliation over revenge. Let us look to the future and not the past.
Order, honourable members. There's a lot of noise. Continue, ma'am.
Through you, Honourable Chairperson, I would today like to provide the ANC of things that do need to fall, unlike statues. The symbols and monuments of our current struggles that must fall. Hostels must fall. Unemployment must fall, unequal education must fall, corruption must fall, patriarchy must fall, racism must fall. Those are the things that need to fall. South Africa has given the ANC 21 years, and you have shown that you're not up to the task. The DA is the only party in South Africa that has a political will to make sure that all our current struggles fall. We stand today with the hard-working, freedom-loving people of our country who want to live and raise families in safe communities. We stand together with South Africans who want to build a country where all of us, regardless of our backgrounds, make progress together. We recognize that the injustices suffered by previous generations harm those who follow. Many born after 1994 still feel the effects of the past, and it is important that those are redressed. The blame for South Africa's failures needs to be placed at the right door. Let us direct our anger to the ANC through the ballot and not at statues. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Fandame. Mhlonishwa Mahlangu. Thank you. Thank you. Order, honourable members.
Honourable Chairperson, Nelson Mandela postulated that heritage awakes a mixture of emotions, and it should illuminate changes that have taken place in South Africa. He characterized our heritage as a joint heritage that acknowledges commitment to democracy, tolerance, and human rights. This is the blueprint on how we should deal with our heritage. It is, however, important to note that, as Mandela pointed out, we have an obligation to join together heritages that are different and sometimes hostile to each other. Since the advent of democracy, while a lot has been achieved, as the Minister have indicated, we are continuously held to ransom by malicious and right-wing movements that poses and uses vast resources whose sole purpose is to stifle transformation and protect minority heritage and symbolism within South African landscape, taking advantage of our world-class and most progressive constitution. By the way, courtesy of the ANC, the constitution. It cannot be right that the country's heritage and symbols, despite positive changes that have taken place accommodating all who live in it, as the Freedom Charter dictates, remain dominated by statues, plagues, place names, cadastrals, cities, town and street names, and memorials of white colonial males, dogs and horses, in exclusion of the rest of South African society. As the heritage cannot be separated from history, it is not correct that representation of the country's heritage is still skewed. It is a fact that South Africa has a rich heritage that predates the arrival of colonialists during the 15th century. This was manipulated together with its history and pushed to the periphery and some to the extinction, whilst the heritage of Europe was brought to the country as a result of African original places names have been given names of Europeans. These disconnected Africans from their own heritage and place names reflected a particular meaning. Land plays a fundamental role in the practice of heritage. Colonialism and land disposition meant that the African race could not practice their heritage. They could not access certain mountains and rivers that were part of their economic, social, and spiritual heritage. In many instances, their ancestral graves became part of white farms, and not only were they not allowed to access them, but white farmers destroyed some of them. The colonialism and apartheid stripped the African people of their dignity, their daily lives, and their eternality. It is this painful disconnection from their heritage that the ANC has strived to restore. A psychiatric philosopher and revolutionary, Frantz Fanon, observed in the Algerian scenario that colonial domination, because it is total and tends to oversimplify, very soon manages to disrupt in spectacular fashion the cultural life of a conquered people. The cultural obliteration is made possible by the negation of national reality and by the new legal relations introduced by occupying powers, by banishment of the natives and their customs to the outlying district by colonial society, by exploration and by systematic enslavement of men and women. This is how African heritage was treated in South Africa by white minority government, of which Maimane is now a leader of that cohort. While successive Honorable Maimane is the leader of that cohort, while successive colonial and apartheid government viewed African heritage with the aim of distort and destroy it, and then condemn it to extinction and secrecy over a period of 400 years, the ANC view has always been different. This is precisely because the ANC views history as an important factor to the modalities of nation building. During the 51st conference of the ANC resolved that the arts and culture component within the ANC Social Transformation Committee must lead in the transformation of arts and culture, and the promotion of South African identity, drawing on the rich heritage of our country, to reinforce the role of family in moral regeneration, to support measures necessary for family revival, that the ANC must lead in the promotion of our national symbols as a mechanism for building a new South African identity, particularly the adoption of the national anthem of the country as an official version of the ANC gathering, that the ANC must protect cultural heritage, including history, as part of major contributions to South African national identity, and ensures ways to keep the history alive and pass it from generation to generation. That the government must expedite the program to develop heritage sites, and the ANC must lead the promotion of heritage and historical memory at the local level through all forms of remembrance. And in this regard, I believe that the Department of Arts and Culture will include in its programs a remembrance of the more than 200 Mozambicans, slaves who perished right here in Cape Town in Clifton Beach 200 years ago on the 27th of December 1794 in a Portuguese boat, SAO Joseph Paquete de Africa, which were transported as cargo, goods to be sold in Brazil, not as human beings. Mindful of the dialectic relationship between history and heritage, the ANC believes that in commemorating the country's heritage, principles of diversity should be the driving force. As a result, the ANC has commemorated struggle heroes, some of whom did not emerge within the ANC, some that had no political links at all. We all need to agree that South Africa's heritage is not reflective of its citizenry. Where else would you find a scenario where a country's heritage reflects the history of the minority? How could such an exclusive heritage promote inclusion? To you, Honorable Miller, it cannot be true. It cannot be expected in the CBDs of Cape Town, Pretoria, Bloemfontein. There's no Africanization of those cities. It is all European. We all have an obligation to ensure that current statues are removed in order to usher new ones. Some of them could even be taken to the Apartheid Museum if that will help. Coming back to some of the comments by my colleagues, I must help the last speaker from the DA to say there is nothing called born freeze. There is nothing called born freeze. Because the DA has been advocating and inviting us to go where they govern, some of us took the challenge and visited the suburbs of Cape Town, all windows facing the ocean, beautiful. Who lives there? Go to Kukuletu. It was so sad. I went to Kukuletu.
Honorable members.
In Kukuletu, where you govern, children have no playgrounds. They play.
Order, Honorable Steenhuisen.
They play in graveyards. Graveyards. When the children, the white children in the suburb have got more grounds, more stadiums, more places to, more swimming pools. It is scandalous for yourselves to claim to be doing anything when you have so much, when you've treated blacks so badly. And some
Honorable member.
Of those in your fold.
Honorable Mashangu. Honorable Mashangu.
The audacity.
Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable Mashangu, please sit. I will attend to you, Honorable Milda, just now. Honorable members, you are drowning the speaker on the podium. We can't hear. Please don't do that. Order, honorable members. Honorable Milda.
Honorable Chairperson, I'm sure the honourable member would like to debate, so I think he would not mind to take a very easy, simple question. He's got a lot of time. Take the question.
Well,
I have a lot of things to say. Listen.
I did not
I'm not taking your question. I'll take it outside once I'm done, okay?
No, take it inside. You
Honorable
use your 10 million you wasted to build parks.
Ek verwag nie daarvan jou nie. as a belief. Honorable Mahlangu, please continue.
Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, Nyanga, all those places where our people live, some of whom literally live on the streets.
Honorable
Some of whom live
Chief
in the
Whip
streets. It is so bad.
of the
It is so
opposition.
scandalous. You should be ashamed of yourselves. In a country where you arrived less than 400 years.
Honorable Mahlangu, ngibawa uhlale kancane baba. Really, honorable members, I don't expect the chief whip of the opposition, who's supposed to be guiding the members, to be the one who really does this to the member on the podium. Honorable members, please, we just have a few minutes to finish. Can we allow the speaker to continue? Wat is nou verkeerd met julle? Honorable members, please, order. Gaan aan, Puti.
Thank you. Well, it is true that recently the DA appointed Musi Maimane to lead them in order to protect white privilege. But to the EFF...
Point of order.
Honorable Musi Maimane.
Point of order.
Honorable Steenhuisen.
For the second time, can you please instruct the speaker to refer to the Honourable Maimane as the Honourable Maimane?
I've said that...
How did you hear that because you were busy making noise?
Listening is always a skill, Chief Whip.
All right, continue, Honourable. Every member of this House is an honourable member. Thank you.
To the members of the EFF... Just to say to Honourable Chewani that today you read from the correct speech. Congratulations. Not the one that you read, you messed up that day. But now, let me perhaps just help. You know, the minister referred to the consultative forum that took place in Pretoria. Yeah, doesn't matter. So in that convention, in that forum, the UCT students came and they said they actually feel very bad about what members of parliament have done. That they embarked on a matter of the transformation of their institution. Amongst other issues were these roads issue. And what did the EFF do? They jumped. They went for the statues. That was not their purpose. So it is dangerous. Unaenda to obtain a speech. Unaenda to obtain a speech. Uma uteng a speech ongasazi ukuthi sivela is chingapi. You would always cause expensive mistakes, and that's what the EFF have done. As I conclude, Honourable Merrill.
Chair, on a point of order. This is a misrepresentation
Honourable
of facts.
Ndosi, let me recognize you.
Yeah, but I said a point of order.
Would you please allow me to recognize you?
I said point of order.
Yeah, but you continue to speak.
Okay, point of order.
Thank you.
This is a misrepresentation of facts because the EFF is the first to start this debate.
Thank
we
you.
are the ones that stood in that platform
Honourable
and said
Ndosi.
statues must go down.
Thank you.
So you are supposed to learn from us,
Honourable
not consult us on removing statues.
Honourable Ndosi, thank you. You made your point, and that is not a point of order. It's a debate. Continue, Honourable.
Honourable Melder, I think we must all be reminded that South Africa is constituted of 1.221473 square kilometers. It does not grow. It will not grow. That's the totality of South Africa. More than 80% of that land is occupied by minorities. So it cannot be correct that every time issues are raised, you want to believe that we must come up with new things in new places. This country will not grow. So the totality of this country belongs to all who live in it. And all those who live in this country should have an equity in the share of the landscape and the heritage of this country. God bless you.
Sithokoze, Mhlonishwa Mahlangu. Bekuyisikhulumi sokugcina selanga. Ngokutsho njalo sithi indlu ivaliwe. Siyathokoza.